Hey guys! Tonight we're pulling back the screen door on the most photographed lie of the 20th century, the perfect 1950s American family, and everything it kept locked behind the front door. Not with scandal, not with monsters, not with anything you'd see coming. No, with tuna casseroles, little brown pill bottles, a bar cart that rolls out at 5 sharp, and a smile rehearsed in the hallway mirror for the neighbors. Before we settle in, go ahead and give this one a like, and hit subscribe if you'd like more history that turned out a good deal stranger than the brochure promised. And leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what your grandmother could conjure out of a single can of cream of mushroom soup. Now get comfortable, switch the lights off, turn the fan on low, and pull the covers up to your ears. Maybe set out a snack, ideally something that did not arrive frozen in an aluminum tray with its own little compartment for cobbler. Have you ever wondered what a 1950s housewife was actually doing in that dark kitchen an hour before anyone else woke up? Why the fastest-selling drug in American history was pointed straight at bored, anxious mothers? What going to stay with an aunt really meant on a tidy suburban street? Why a grown woman with her own paycheck couldn't get a charge card without a man signing for it? What the family quietly did with the child who didn't fit? And whose bright idea was it that crouching under a little wooden school desk would save a child from an atomic bomb? Congratulations! The year is 1955. Home is a brand new house on a brand new street in a suburb that did not exist 5 years ago. You're wearing pearls before noon. There's a roast in the oven, a tranquilizer in the drawer, and the bridge club arriving in 40 minutes to inspect your powder room. The lawn is immaculate. So is everything else, officially. Good luck. You are awake before the sun, before your husband, before the children, and this is not an accident. Your whole job this morning is to make it look like the house runs itself. The coffee has to be percolating, the bacon has to be started, the kitchen has to look like it was never anything but clean, all before anyone downstairs opens an eye. You move quietly in the half-dark, setting the stage. By the time the family wakes, the performance must already be running and you must look like you have been up for no time at all. The percolator is the first witness. It starts its low gurgle in the dark, and you stand over it in your robe like a woman tending a machine that holds the morning hostage. The coffee has to be ready, not starting, ready, by the time your husband's feet hit the floor upstairs. The bacon goes into the cold pan so it renders slow and even, the grease ticking into the tin can you keep on the back of the stove for exactly this. You are not cooking breakfast, you are building a set, and the set has to look like it assembled itself. This is the part of the day nobody is meant to see, which is the entire point of it. The magazines call it homemaking, as if the home makes itself and you merely supervise. In practice, you are the night shift and the day shift and the stage crew, clocking in before the lights so the show looks effortless when the curtain goes up. Picture a restaurant that wants every guest to believe the kitchen does not exist. You are that kitchen. You are also the waiter, the busboy, and the sign on the door. Earl the milkman has already come and gone, leaving the bottles sweating on the step, and you bring them in before the cold can cloud them, because even the milk is expected to look composed. You wipe the counter you already wiped, you fold the dish towel into a clean line. It will not survive past 8 o'clock. The toaster waits. The juice waits. Everything is arranged in the order it will be needed, laid out like instruments before surgery. Now the lipstick. You put it on before anyone is awake to see your face without it, because the rule, unwritten and absolute, is that the family should not have to meet the raw version of you. The wife who greets the morning as a finished product, hairpinned, colour on, robe belted, voice already tuned to pleasant. The woman who got up in the dark and did the work is not invited to the table. She clocks out the second the first child appears. By the time your son thunders down the stairs, the kitchen is humming, warm and complete, and he has no idea it was ever anything else. He eats his eggs in a house that, as far as he knows, has always been this bright and ready, because no one wakes him for the part where it wasn't. This is the first successful illusion of his childhood, and you produce it fresh every single day before sunrise. The strange part is how invisible the labour stays even to you. There is no clock that records this shift, no envelope at the end of the week. The work lands somewhere off the books, in the dark, with the percolator and the cold pan and the lipstick applied to an empty room. You are very good at it. You have to be. A kitchen that looked like a kitchen an hour after sunrise would be read by everyone who matters as a small personal failure. So you stand in the warm yellow light with your coffee, the one cup you will drink sitting down, and take the quiet minute before the day starts for real. Behind a dozen other dark windows up and down the street, a dozen other women are doing the exact same thing at the exact same hour. None of you will ever mention it. The show depends on the audience never seeing the crew. You have about 10 minutes before the car turns into the drive, and everything you do now is for those 10 minutes. You check your lipstick, you fix your hair, you straighten the cushions and lower the radio and put a cool drink within reach of the chair he will sit in. The magazines have been very clear about this arrival. He has had a hard day in the world, and your task is to receive him into a calm, bright, complaint-free home, as if the house has simply been waiting, holding its breath, for him to come back to it. The advice is remarkably specific, and you have absorbed all of it. Touch up your makeup so you look fresh, not frazzled. Remove your apron, because the apron suggests labor, and labor is not restful to look at. Clear away the children's clutter so the path from the door to the chair is smooth and unobstructed. Have dinner timed, not started. Speak in a low, soothing voice. Do not, whatever you do, greet him with your own complaints, because his day was the hard one and yours was merely the house. What the magazines are describing, if you read it plainly, is a hotel. You are running a small, very exclusive hotel with exactly one guest. And the guest checks in every evening expecting turn-down service, a warm welcome, and a staff that never mentions its own feet hurting. The drink is the welcome cocktail. The cleared path is the lobby. The lowered voice is the front desk, trained to absorb the day without flinching. When your husband does come through the door, he loosens his tie with one hand and hangs his hat on the hook by the mirror in a single tired motion he has performed 10,000 times. He does not see the 10 minutes of staging. He sees a calm house, a cool drink, a wife who looks like she has been relaxing pleasantly all afternoon awaiting his return. That is the product. The product took preparation, but the preparation is the part you are specifically instructed to hide. The children have been briefed too. They have been told to be glad to see Daddy, to save the squabbles for later, to give him a moment before they start. So the family arranges itself into a tableau of homecoming, everyone playing their small, grateful and obedient part, and for a few minutes the front room looks exactly like the advertisement that sold the whole arrangement in the first place. There is a tenderness buried in it, somewhere under the choreography. You do want him to feel welcomed. You do want the door he comes through to open onto warmth. But the magazines have taken that ordinary human wish to greet someone you love and turned it into a checklist with a failure condition, where a tired greeting or an honest face counts as a wifely lapse. The love is real. The performance is mandatory. You no longer try to separate the two. The cool drink, you will notice, is the same cool drink that opens the cocktail hour, which means the welcome and the drinking begin at the very same moment every evening, hand in hand, before anyone has had a chance to call either one by a harder name. You set the glass down on the little coaster. The coaster matters. A ring on the side table would be a flaw in the production, and the side table, like everything in this room, has been coached to behave. Then the moment passes, the tableau breaks, and the ordinary chaos of an evening resumes. But the welcome has landed, the curtain rose on schedule, and the show was, once again, a quiet success. You did not get a moment of welcome yourself when you came down the stairs this morning into the dark kitchen. Nobody was waiting with a cool drink and a soothing voice for you. But that asymmetry is not on any checklist, so you press it flat and put it away with the good silver in the place the family keeps the things it has agreed not to mention. At 5 o'clock the bar cart comes out, and nobody in this house calls what happens next drinking. You call it the cocktail hour. You measure the gin, you twist the lemon, you hand over the highball the way you would hand over a coat or a newspaper, as part of the natural order of the evening. The drink before dinner is a ritual, a reward, a sign that the day is properly closing. The second drink is the same ritual. So is the third. The word for all of this is hospitality, and the word is doing a great deal of work. The bar cart itself is a piece of furniture with social ambitions. It has the good glasses, the heavy ones that feel important in the hand, and the little tools, the silver tongs, and the strainer and the stirrer, nobody can quite explain. It rolls. That is its great gift. It glides from the corner to the centre of the evening on its small brass wheels like a tiny, glamorous ambulance, arriving exactly when the nerves of the household need attention. The cart could rent itself out as a mobile pharmacy, and on some evenings it nearly does. You have learned the recipes the way you learn the casseroles, off the backs of things and out of the mouths of other wives. A martini is gin and a whisper of vermouth, cold enough to ache. An old-fashioned needs the sugar muddled first. Highballs are forgiving, which is why there are so many of them. You make these with the same steady competence you bring to everything, because a wife who cannot mix a proper drink is, in this decade, genuinely considered to be missing a skill. The arithmetic of the cocktail hour is where the language starts to strain. 1 drink is civilized, 2 is sociable. By the time the bottle is doing the real talking, the evening has slid somewhere it does not have a polite name for, and the household simply agrees, without a meeting, never to give it one. The man who has 3 every night is not a drinker. He is a man who enjoys his cocktail hour. The distinction is entirely in the phrasing, and the phrasing holds the whole thing together like the cream of mushroom soup holds the casserole. Your neighbour Marge keeps her cart stocked the way a field hospital keeps supplies, and she will tell you cheerfully that she could not get through a dinner party without it, which is true, and which is also the kind of sentence that would worry you if either of you ever slowed down to hear it, but you do not slow down. The cart rolls out at 5, the day exhales, and the small warm and welcome loosening that follows is the closest thing to rest the schedule permits. The men have their own version downtown, of course. They have the lunch that runs to 2 or 3 cocktails and gets written off as a business expense, which means the whole country has agreed that being a little drunk before the afternoon is half gone is a legitimate cost of doing commerce. Your husband comes home already softened at the edges, and you hand him the welcome drink on top of it, and the evening builds gently from there. None of this is hidden. Exactly. It happens in the bright living room, in front of the children, with ice and lemon and good manners. That is what makes it so durable. A secret can be exposed, but a ritual performed openly in pearls, with a coaster under the glass, defends itself simply by looking respectable. The bar cart is not a confession. It is a credenza, so you twist the lemon and pass the glass and refill it when it empties, and you tell yourself, accurately, that you are being a good hostess in your own home. The word hospitality stretches to cover the whole evening. It is a generous word. It has carried heavier things than this, in living rooms exactly like yours, all the way down the street. There is a small brown bottle in the kitchen drawer, and you know exactly where it sits, just behind the bottle opener and the rubber bands. The doctor gave it to you for your nerves. He did not ask many questions before he did. You take one with a glass of water in the late morning, around the time the quiet of the empty house starts to press in, and you take another in the afternoon if the pressing gets worse. The label says Miltown. Everybody you know seems to have the same little bottle in a drawer just like this one. You did not go looking for the bottle. The bottle was offered. You mentioned to Dr. Ostrander, almost in passing, that you felt wound a little tight lately, that the afternoons had a way of closing in, and he nodded the way men nod at weather and wrote something on his pad without quite looking up. That was the whole consultation. You walked in with a vague unhappiness and walked out with a prescription, which is, you are coming to understand, simply how it is done now. The pharmacist fills it without comment. Mr. Voss pours the tablets down into the amber bottle, caps it, and sets it on the counter with your change. He has filled plenty of these lately. The whole town seems to be running slightly on them. The drug is called Miltown, and in the 2 short years since it arrived, it has become the fastest thing the country has ever swallowed. 1 billion little tablets gone in the time most products take just to find a shelf. It is, people will tell you cheerfully, a wonder. It takes the sharp edge off the day without putting you under. The comedians joke about it on the television. One of them has started calling himself Uncle Miltown, and the audience laughs because everyone is in on it. At the better parties, you have heard, the pills get passed around in a little dish like salted peanuts, a friendly something to smooth the evening along. What nobody quite says aloud is who is doing most of the swallowing. The bottle lives in the kitchen drawer, not the medicine cabinet, because it belongs to the daytime, to the long, quiet hours when the house is empty and clean, and there is nothing left to do but feel whatever you have been trying not to feel. The men have their cocktail hour at 5, the women have a pill at 11 and another at 3. Both arrangements solve the same problem. Only one of them comes with a doctor's blessing. And the problem it is solving is real, even if no one will name it. The flat afternoons, the restlessness with no object. The sense that you are doing everything correctly and feeling somehow like a guest in your own life. The pill does not fix any of that. It just lowers the volume, turns the sharp ache into a soft, grey and manageable hum you can keep house over, so the dishes still get done and the smile still arrives on schedule. It is less a cure than a very polite muffler. Doctor. Ostrander did not ask what was actually wrong, and you did not really tell him, and the bottle sits in the drawer as the agreed translation of a conversation neither of you finished. Women in kitchens all over town are holding the exact same amber bottle at the exact same hour, each one certain it is a private little arrangement between her and her own weakness. So you take one at the sink, you wait the few minutes for the edges to soften, and you go back to the ironing. The bottle returns to the drawer behind the bottle opener, where it waits, patient and rattling, for 3 o'clock. It is the most modern thing in your kitchen. It is also the loneliest, though you would never put it that way, and neither would anyone else, which is exactly how a thing that lonely manages to look, from the outside, like a wonder. Tonight's dinner begins, as most of them do, with a can opener. You open the cream of mushroom soup, because the cream of mushroom soup is the foundation of nearly everything you are expected to serve. It binds the casserole. It sauces the chicken. It is the structural cement of the modern American supper, poured grey and thick over whatever protein the week allows. The recipe came off the back of the can, or out of a magazine, or from the woman next door, and all three sources agree completely on what a good wife puts in front of her family. The casserole is the great achievement of the modern kitchen, and its genius is that it hides everything. Yesterday's chicken, a handful of egg noodles, a can of soup, a can of peas, a crushed sleeve of crackers across the top for what the magazines call texture, and 40 minutes in the oven to fuse it all into one warm, beige and forgiving mass, roughly the size of a manhole cover. Nothing in it can be identified and nothing in it can choplin. It is dinner as amnesty, where every leftover is granted a fresh start and no one asks where it came from. The companies that make the cans understand exactly what they are selling, and it is not food, it is reassurance. The advertisement does not say this soup tastes good. It says a thoughtful wife keeps it on hand, that a family deserves a hot meal, that you, specifically, can be the kind of woman who never gets caught short. Eleanor next door clips these recipes and files them in a little tin box, and she reads them to you over coffee with the seriousness of a woman reciting law, because in a way she is. Then there is the gelatin, which is its own frontier. Lime gelatin is not, in this decade, a dessert. It is a building material. Into its trembling green body go shredded carrots, diced celery, canned shrimp, olives, sometimes a startled wedge of hard-boiled egg, all suspended mid-float, like specimens in a jar. You unmold it onto a lettuce leaf and it sits there on the table, cool and glistening and faintly menacing, radiating the confidence of a dish that knows it photographs beautifully and refuses to consider how it tastes. It is not legally a food, but it is on the table. The boxed cake mix arrives with its own quiet drama. The manufacturers discovered that a mix needing only water made the wife feel like a fraud, like she had not really baked anything, so they cleverly redesigned it to require her to add an egg. One egg. That single egg restored her dignity, let her believe the cake was hers, and sold far more boxes. It is one of the more honest things the decade ever admitted, that the work could be removed, but the feeling of having worked had to stay, or the whole arrangement stopped selling. All of this is marketed as freedom, as time handed back to you, as the kitchen finally working for the woman instead of against her. And some of it is genuinely easier, but the easier it gets, the higher the standard climbs to meet it, so that a wife who once made one good supper is now expected to make a varied week of them, plus the cake, plus the moulded salad, plus the little something for the bridge club, all from cans, all looking effortless. So you stand at the counter with the opener biting around the lid, and you assemble tonight's casserole the way you assemble everything else, competently, quickly, from parts designed to disappear into the hole. The oven warms. The crackers crisp on top. The kitchen fills with the particular smell of canned soup meeting heat, a smell that means dinner in 10,000 houses tonight at once. It is not cooking, exactly, the way your grandmother would have meant it, but it is dinner, it is on time, and it photographs beautifully, which has become the only three things a meal is required to be. It is laundry day, which arrives more than once a week now, that the machine has supposedly set you free. You sort the whites from the colours with the seriousness of a woman diffusing something. The whites are the problem. The whites are always the problem. because a grey collar or a dingy sheet is not read as a small thing in this neighbourhood. It is read as a statement about you. The new washer hums in the basement, the advertisements promised it would hand you back your afternoons, and somehow your afternoons are exactly as full as they were before. Here is the trick nobody warned you about. The machine did not reduce the work. It raised the expectation. When laundry meant a tub and a board and a whole brutal day of it, a family had a wash day and wore things more than once, and nobody thought less of them. Now that the washer does the heaving, the standard has floated upward to absorb every minute you saved. So the shirts must be fresh daily, the sheets crisp, the whites blinding. You did not get an easier job. You got a harder grade on the same one. The whites are where reputations are made and lost. A truly white sheet, snapping on the line in the sun, is a small public bulletin announcing that the woman of this house is on top of things. A greyish one is a confession. So you wage the war with an arsenal. The advertisements keep expanding. The detergent, the bleach, the bluing that tricks the eye into reading grey as white, each product promising a whiter white than the last, as if white came in exactly 7 distinct, recognised grades, each one costlier than the grade before it. Your mother-in-law, Mrs. Pell, has opinions about all of it, and she shares them by lifting a corner of a folded towel to the window light and saying nothing at all, just holding it there, letting the silence do the inspecting. That gesture has ended marriages, or at least felt like it could. You have learned to fold the towels so the good side faces out and the truth folds inward, which is, you are beginning to notice, the organising principle of nearly everything you do. The ringer on the old machine took a finger off a woman 2 streets over, caught her hand and pulled, because a ringer does not understand the difference between a sheet and the arm feeding it. The new machines are safer, mostly, but the basement is still a place of hazards nobody counts. The harsh soaps that crack your knuckles, the bleach fumes that sting in the closed air, the heavy wet loads that age a back quietly over years. None of it shows. That is the requirement. The labour must vanish into the result. Then comes the ironing, which the machine did nothing to abolish. You stand at the board for an hour or 2 with the radio on, pressing the collars and the handkerchiefs and the little dresses, the iron hissing steam and spitting whenever it senses hesitation, the pile never quite reaching 0. There is a meditative cruelty to it, the same motion over and over, the small, warm, and sweetish smell of scorched starch, the basket that empties on Tuesday and fills again by Thursday like a tide that has heard of rest but does not believe in it. And when it is all done, the whites blinding, the shirts hung, the towels folded good side out, no one will say a word, because a job done right in this house is a job that becomes invisible. Praise comes only for failure, in the form of a comment about a grey collar, so you measure your success in the silence, in the absence of remark, in the smooth, uncommented surface of a family that always, somehow, simply has clean clothes. The machine set you free. You can tell, because you are busier than ever, working at a standard your grandmother would have found frankly insane, and calling it, with a straight face, the easy modern way. You want to open a charge account at the department store downtown, the one with the good draperies, and so you learn the rule that governs your entire financial life. The account cannot be yours. It can only be his, with your name attached underneath like a guest pass. The salesman is perfectly polite about it. He simply needs your husband's signature, your husband's income, your husband's final say, because in the eyes of the store and the bank and the law, the money that runs this household belongs to someone whose name is not the one you spend it under, Mr. Dabney at the credit desk slides the form across to you with a fountain pen and a kindly smile, and points one neat finger at the line where the man of the house must sign. He is not being cruel. He is following the rule, the same rule everywhere, the one that says a married woman is a financial extension of her husband rather than a person with money of her own. You can choose the curtains. You cannot, by yourself, promise to pay for them. Think about what this actually means across a life. You run the household budget with the precision of a quartermaster. You stretch the grocery money, you balance the accounts, you know to the penny what comes in and goes out, and you have done this flawlessly for years, and none of it counts. Not 1 cent of that record attaches to your name. The credit you build belongs to him, accrues to him, follows him, the way a shadow follows the man and not the lamp. The trap closes hardest at the worst possible moment. A woman whose husband dies, or who finally leaves a marriage she should never have stayed in, discovers that she has no financial existence at all. No history, no standing. The bank looks at 20 years of careful, frugal, and faultless household management and sees a blank page, because the page was always in his name, and she must begin from absolute zero, as if she were a child or a new arrival to the country rather than the woman who ran the whole operation. Nobody calls this cruelty, because it does not feel like cruelty from the inside of a good marriage. When your husband is decent and the money is shared and the curtains get bought, the rule is invisible, just the pleasant water you swim in. It only shows its teeth when the marriage turns, when the man is foolish or drunk or gone, and the woman finds the whole machine was built on the cheerful assumption that he would always be reasonable and always be there. Your neighbour Lorraine learned this the hard way when her husband ran the family into debt at the racetrack, quietly, on credit that was entirely his to ruin, and she could not so much as see the statements, let alone stop him. The law had handed him the steering wheel and bolted her into the passenger seat, and then acted surprised that she went over the cliff with him. She is rebuilding now, slowly, in a world that treats her competence as if it were a rumour. So you take the pen, and you take the form home for your husband to sign, and you tell yourself it is only a formality, which it is, right up until the day it is the whole story. You are very good with money. You are trusted with the family's entire daily economy, and you cannot put your own name on a department store account for a set of curtains without a man vouching that you are good for it. The contradiction is enormous, and you carry it the way you carry everything else, folded small, good side out, the truth turned politely inward toward the wall. You can see 3 other houses from your kitchen window, and you know exactly what is happening inside all of them. You know when the Hendersons got the new car, because you watched it arrive. You know the Caldwells repainted, because you can see the fresh white trim from here. Keeping up is not a hobby in this neighbourhood. It is the work itself, conducted in lawns and appliances and the small visible upgrades that announce a family is doing fine. Nobody discusses it out loud. Everybody keeps a running tally, and the tally never closes. The lawn is the front line. A suburban lawn serves no purpose a human being can name, but it must be edged, fed, watered, and mowed into a flat green sheet, because the lawn is the first sentence the house says to the street. A patch of crabgrass is a slipped mask. So the men go out on Saturday and tend their squares of grass with a devotion they show almost nothing else, kneeling at the edges with little clippers, grooming the yard like a nervous barber working on someone important. Mr. Henderson got the new car, the one with the chrome and the fins, and he washed it in the driveway on Sunday in full view of everyone, slowly, lovingly, running the chamois over the hood in long strokes that were really a kind of announcement. The car is not transportation, the car is a press release. And the moment it appeared in his driveway, 3 other husbands on the street began, quietly, to feel that their own perfectly good cars had developed a sudden and urgent inadequacy. Inside, the competition moves to appliances, the new refrigerator with the freezer on top, the washer in a fashionable colour, the television in a wooden cabinet the size of a small altar. Each one gets shown off casually, "Oh, this old thing," while the visitor takes silent inventory and carries the data home. The new refrigerator hums smugly through all of it, aware to the penny of what it cost. It is, when you stand back from it, a group conversation in which no one speaks and everyone is comparing kitchens, a slow, quiet, an expensive arms race fought with chrome and enamel and the studied pretense that nobody is keeping score. Everybody is keeping score. The trouble is that the scoreboard has no top. There is always a newer car, a bigger set, a greener lawn, a family one rung up doing it slightly better, so the striving never resolves into rest. You reach the thing you were straining toward and find the target has politely moved. The magazines have a cheerful name for the whole exhausting machine. Keeping up with the Joneses, as if the Joneses were a real family you could finally satisfy, rather than a horizon that recedes exactly as fast as you walk. And it costs more than money, though it certainly costs money, often money that is not really there, financed and stretched and quietly worried over behind the bright new purchases. It costs the simple ability to be content with enough, because enough is not a category the street recognizes. Miss us. Caldwell repaints a house that did not need painting, and she does it not from joy but from a low hum of comparison that never quite switches off, the sense that to stop improving the surface is to begin, visibly, to fall. So you keep your own lawn green and your own trim fresh, and your own appliances current enough to pass, and you take your place in the silent tournament that nobody admits is happening. From your kitchen window, the street looks serene, prosperous, settled. What you cannot see, but have begun to suspect, is that behind every one of those tidy windows, another woman is standing at her own sink, watching your house, keeping her own tally, certain that you, at least, have it all figured out. On the nights you serve the frozen dinners, the family eats them on folding trays in front of the television, and the television is showing you a family. The set glows in the dim living room while the aluminum trays tick as they cool. On the screen, a calm father solves a small problem in 22 minutes, a tidy mother laughs in pearls, and the children learn a gentle lesson and go to bed. Your family watches this family eat its troubles into a neat resolution, forks moving, nobody speaking, the real living room dark around the bright fictional one. The dinner in the tray is a small marvel of its moment. A few years ago, a frozen food company found itself stuck with an absurd mountain of unsold Thanksgiving turkey, more than 500,000 pounds of it, riding around in refrigerated railcars with nowhere to go. A salesman had the idea to portion it into segmented aluminum trays, turkey here, stuffing there, peas and sweet potatoes in their own little tin moats, and sell the whole thing frozen for 98 cents. They expected to move a few thousand. They sold over 10 million in the first year. The tray is engineered for exactly this scene. Dinner that requires no table, no serving dish, no conversation, nothing but a fork and a clear view of the screen. The compartments keep the foods from touching, which feels important to everyone and matters to no one. There is even a little square reserved for the cobbler, which emerges from the oven scalding at the edges and faintly frozen in the middle, achieving approximately 3 temperatures it has no business holding at once, like a dessert that could not decide and committed to all of them. And up on the screen glows the family you are quietly being graded against. The father who knows best, calm, wise, and unhurried, dispensing wisdom that always lands. The mother who vacuums in heels and pearls and never once looks tired or short with anyone. The children whose worst crime is a fib that gets gently corrected by the closing music. Nobody on that screen drinks too much, or weeps in the afternoon, or waits all day to be disciplined, or keeps a little brown bottle in a drawer. It is a documentary about a country that does not exist, broadcast into the living room of a country that does, and the gap between the two is doing slow, quiet work on everyone watching. Your son measures his real father against the pipe and the patience. You measure yourself against the woman in pearls who has no inner weather at all. The show is not selling a story so much as a yardstick, and the yardstick is rigged, because no actual family can compete with one that gets to fix every problem in time for the commercial. The strangest part is how the broadcast becomes the original and your life becomes the flawed copy. The neighbours do not aspire to your kitchen. They aspire to the kitchen on the screen, and so do you, and so the television family sets the standard that the whole street then strains to imitate. You are all watching the same impossible family and privately concluding, separately, in the dark, that you alone are the one falling short. So the trays tick, the screen glows, the fictional father solves his small clean problem, and your family sits in the blue light eating turkey from a tin, not talking, soothed and instructed at the same time. When the program ends, you gather the trays, fold them, carry them to the bin, and turn off the set, and the bright little family blinks out to a white dot and then to nothing. Then it is just your living room again, ordinary and dim and real, with its actual people and its actual quiet, holding all the troubles the screen so kindly promised could be solved by the time the music came up. Your son has done something today, something involving a broken window or a missing dollar or a word he should not have said, and you reach for the sentence every mother on this street keeps loaded. You tell him to wait till his father gets home. The discipline in this house has a chain of command, and you are not the top of it. You are the witness, the recorder, the one who holds the charge until the breadwinner arrives to deliver the verdict. The boy spends the whole afternoon waiting, which is, in fact, exactly the point. The sentence is a marvel of household engineering. It does several jobs at once. It removes you from the role of villain, since you are merely reporting the matter upward, not ruling on it. It reserves the real authority for the man, who gets to descend from the larger world at 6 o'clock and dispense justice he had no part in witnessing. And it stretches the punishment across the entire afternoon, so the child marinates in his own dread for hours before anything actually happens, which the household considers not a cruelty but a feature. Your son spends those hours doing the slow, dreadful and private math of his own doom. He is quieter than he has been all week. He helps without being asked. He sets the table with the careful diligence of a man trying to bribe fate, glancing at the clock, listening for the car. The waiting does more work than any spanking could, because a spanking ends and dread does not, and the boy is learning, in real time, that the worst part of trouble is the long silence before the door opens. When your husband does come home, you hand him the charge along with his hat, a quiet word in the hall, and he takes up the role he is expected to take, the tired man who must now, on top of everything, be the law. Sometimes it is a stern talk. Sometimes it is the belt or the wooden spoon, applied without much heat, because in this decade the rod is simply considered part of the standard equipment of fatherhood, no more remarkable than the lawnmower. Nobody in the neighborhood questions any of this, because the alternative has not been invented yet. A child is a thing to be corrected into shape, like a hedge, and a household without clear consequences is thought to be a household sliding toward ruin. The gentle modern parenting book on the shelf upstairs has opinions about all this, kinder ones, but the book lives in one part of the house and the wooden spoon lives in another, and the two do not always speak. There is a tenderness tangled up in it that makes the whole thing harder to see clearly. Your husband does not enjoy the verdicts. He would rather come home to peace than to a charge waiting in the hall. And the boy, for all his dread, will grow up and use the very same sentence on children of his own, because it was handed to him as simply the way fathers and mothers divide the work, the mother holding and the father deciding, generation passing it down like a serving dish. So the afternoon ticks along under its small cloud, the table gets set, the clock crawls towards 6, and the boy who broke the window learns the lesson the sentence was really built to teach, which is not about windows at all. It is about where the power sits in this house, and who carries the charges, and who delivers the verdicts, and how a whole family can love one another sincerely while still running on a chain of command borrowed, more or less intact, from an army. Then the car turns into the drive, and everyone takes their places, and the day's small justice is done. There is a thick paperback on the shelf called Baby and Child Care, and you have read it the way some people read scripture. Doctor, Spock tells you to trust yourself, to be warm, to hold the baby when the baby cries. It is a kinder book than the one your own mother was handed, and yet the wooden spoon still hangs by the stove, and the hairbrush still has a second use everybody understands, and the gentle modern advice in your hands lives in the same kitchen as the older, harder methods nobody has actually agreed to stop using. The book arrived a few years after the war and never really left a nightstand since. Half the mothers you know own a copy, dog-eared and softened, its spine cracked open to the pages on fevers and feeding. Doctor, Spock's great revolutionary idea, the one that scandalized the grandmothers, was almost embarrassingly simple. You know more than you think you do. Pick up the crying baby. Affection will not spoil a child. After generations of advice that treated infants like little machines to be scheduled and toughened, this landed like a window thrown open in a stuffy room. Your own mother was handed the opposite gospel. The earlier experts warned that too much holding would ruin a child, that babies should be fed by the clock and not the cry, that kissing them was faintly unhygienic and definitely unwise. She raised you on a timetable and a firm hand, believing, because she was told, that warmth was a weakness that bred weaklings. So, when you cradle your fussing baby in the small hours of the night, you are quietly disobeying her, with a paperback for a permission slip. But here is the curious thing about the Kinder book. It sits on the shelf in the same house as the belt, and the two coexist with almost no friction at all. You can read all about patience and understanding in the afternoon, and still send your son to wait for his father in the evening, because the book changed the theory faster than it changed the kitchen. The wooden spoon is older than any paperback. It has tenure. It is not going to be argued out of a job by a chapter on emotional development, so the household runs on a comfortable contradiction. The baby gets held, warmly, on expert advice. The older child gets the spoon firmly on ancestral advice. Nobody experiences this as hypocrisy, because the two systems were absorbed at different times, and simply layered on top of each other like wallpaper over wallpaper, the new pattern bright on the surface, the old one still there underneath, showing through at the corners. The book is not perfect, and parts of it will not age gracefully, but it does one genuinely good thing. It tells an anxious, tired, and isolated young mother, alone in a house all day with a creature that cannot tell her what is wrong, that she is not failing, that her instinct to comfort is correct, that she may trust the love she already feels. In a decade that hands women so few permissions, a fat paperback granting that one is no small thing to keep on the shelf. So you keep it there, between the cookbook and the atlas, and you reach for it when the fever spikes or the rash appears or the worry climbs past what you can manage alone, and it steadies you the way a calm voice steadies you. It is the kindest authority in the house. It is also not the only one, and it knows its limits, and it stays on its shelf while the older methods keep their posts by the stove, the gentle book and the wooden spoon raising the same children together, each certain it is doing right by them. One of the children in the family is what the grown-ups call difficult, and you have started to notice how careful everyone gets when they say the word. He talks back, or he cannot sit still, or he cries at the wrong things, and none of it fits the smooth shape a child is supposed to take. The neighbours offer advice with their eyebrows, the relatives lower their voices. In this decade, a child who does not fit is not always simply allowed to be a child who does not fit, and you have begun to understand, dimly, where that road can lead. The vocabulary for him is thin and unkind. He is high-strung. He is a handful. He is willful, nervous, slow, too much, not right. There is no gentler word available, because the gentler words have not been invented yet. The ones that will someday describe a child whose mind simply runs on a different track rather than a broken one. For now, there is only the smooth shape every child is measured against, and the growing list of ways this particular boy fails to match it. The pressure to fix him comes from everywhere and lands on you. A well-meaning aunt suggests more discipline. The teacher suggests he is not trying. A neighbour mentions, helpfully, a cousin who was just like that and turned out fine after some firmness. Everyone has a theory, and every theory assumes the boy is a problem to be corrected rather than a person to be understood, and all of it presses toward the same quiet question nobody asks out loud, which is what is to be done with a child who will not be smoothed. And this is where the decade keeps a door most people prefer not to look at directly. There are doctors now who travel from town to town offering to quiet a troublesome mind for good, with a quick procedure and a confident manner, operating on the restless and the sad and, sometimes, on children no older than this one. A parent at the end of her rope, told by a man with credentials that this is the modern answer, might believe him. The procedure is fast. The man is sure of himself. The result is a child who never gives anyone trouble again, in the way that a clock that has been stopped never runs fast again either. You are tired, frightened, and furious. But you do not pick up the telephone. You do not let your mind walk all the way down that hall. You hold your difficult boy a little closer instead, the way the paperback on the shelf told you to, and you decide, quietly and without announcing it, that you will not be talked into smoothing him into something smaller. It is not a heroic decision. It does not feel like one. It feels like simply declining to hand your own child to a stranger with a sure manner and a quick procedure, which in this decade is, astonishingly, a decision a mother has to actively make. So you manage. You learn his weather, the things that set him off and the things that settle him, the way he needs the tag cut out of his collar and the door left open a crack at night. You run interference with the relatives. You absorb the eyebrows at the grocery store. You become, without any training, the one expert on this specific child, because the actual experts of the moment are offering solutions you want no part of. It is lonely work, defending a child against an entire era's idea of what a child should be, and there is no paperback for it, and no bridge club that meets about it. But he is yours, exactly as he is, talking back and crying at the wrong things and refusing to be smoothed, and you have decided that the trouble he causes is simply the cost of him being himself. The neighbours will keep their eyebrows. You will keep your boy, whole and difficult and entirely intact, which turns out to be the bravest ordinary thing you do all decade. It is your turn to host the bridge club, which means it is your turn to be inspected. The women arrive in their good shoes, and they are here to play cards, and they are also here to read your house the way a building inspector reads a foundation. You have polished the things that will be seen and hidden the things that will not. They will note the cleanliness of the powder room. They will register the quality of the little sandwiches. Every smile in your living room this afternoon is doing 2 jobs, and only one of them is friendly. You have been preparing for 2 days, which everyone will pretend you did not do. The good cloth is out. The silver dish is polished to a shine that announces it was polished. The sandwiches are crustless and cut on the diagonal, because a sandwich cut straight across would be read as a woman who did not care enough And a woman who did not care enough is the worst thing the bridge club can quietly conclude about anyone. The whole afternoon is a test disguised as a leisure activity, which is, in fact, the most efficient kind of test, because the subject is not allowed to admit she is taking it. Mrs. Caldwell arrives last, as she always does. She wipes one gloved finger along the edge of the mantle as she passes it, not quite an accusation, just a small private audit of approximately 7 separate points, a gesture so quick you would miss it if you were not watching for it, which you always are. She is the unspoken chairwoman of the neighbourhood's opinion, and her verdict on a hostess travels the block faster than the telephone, and so the whole room arranges itself, subtly, around keeping Mrs. Caldwell from finding anything to mention. The powder room is the real examination, and everyone knows it. A guest will excuse herself, and she will be gone slightly longer than strictly necessary, and she will return having silently inventoried the state of your guest towels, the freshness of the soap, the condition of the little things you only put out for company. So you have staged that small room like a window display, fresh towels no one is meant to actually use, a new bar of soap shaped like a shell, everything arranged to be seen and nothing arranged to be useful. The card game itself is almost beside the point, a pleasant, brisk, and genteel clatter of bidding and trumps over which the real business gets done, which is the gentle exchange of information about who is doing well and who is slipping, a casual question about someone not present, a raised eyebrow at a piece of news. The bridge club is a court, a newsroom, and a regulatory agency all wearing the same floral dresses, and its rulings shape the reputations of women who are not even in the room to defend themselves. And yet you need it, which is the trap. These same inspecting women are also your only society, the nearest thing you have to colleagues, the people who would bring a casserole if you were sick and mind your children in a true emergency. The surveillance and the support come bundled together in the same floral package. You cannot accept the one without submitting to the other. So you submit, gladly and warily at once, pouring the coffee, refilling the silver dish, smiling the smile that watches. When they finally gather their good shoes and their handbags and go, you stand in the doorway waving, and the moment the last car pulls away, the performance drops off you like a coat. You survey the room, the sandwiches held. The powder room passed. Mrs. Caldwell found nothing to carry down the block. You have won this round of the endless tournament, which means only that you get to host again in 6 weeks and defend the title. You begin clearing the cups, already, somewhere in the back of your mind, planning the next set of sandwiches. There is one rule in this family that outranks all the others, and nobody ever says it aloud, because saying it aloud would already be breaking it. Whatever happens in this house stays in this house. The argument last night, the bottle that empties too fast, the bruise, the bill that cannot be paid, the child who is not right, the marriage that has gone cold as the cellar. All of it gets folded up small and kept behind the front door, because the front door is the line between the family and the audience must never see backstage. The rule is taught early and absorbed completely, mostly without words. A child learns it by watching his mother answer a neighbour's "How are you?" with a bright and instant fine, the same fine she would give if the house were on fire behind her. He learns that there are 2 registers of family life, the indoor truth and the outdoor report, and that fluency and switching between them on the doorstep is simply part of growing up, like learning to tie a shoe. What goes behind the door is everything that does not photograph well, the drinking that has stopped being social, the temper that leaves marks, the money that does not stretch no matter how it is pulled, the diagnosis whispered at the doctor's, the relative who had to go away. Each family carries its own private cargo, and each family is absolutely certain that its cargo is uniquely shameful, when in fact the houses up and down the street are all packed to the rafters with the very same kinds of secrets. Each one convinced it is the only ship taking on water. The genius and the cruelty of the rule are the same thing. It keeps the neighbourhood serene, settled, and unremarkable, every lawn calm, every greeting pleasant, the whole street running smooth as a film. And it leaves every single person inside utterly alone with whatever they are carrying, because to ask for help would be to admit there is a problem, and to admit there is a problem would be to fail at the one job that outranks all the others, which is to appear not to have any. The rule does not solve suffering, it just soundproofs it. It is why the woman with the dangerous husband does not tell her sister. It is why the man drowning in debt smiles at the barbecue. It is why the mother medicating her flat afternoons assumes she is the only one, when the woman next door is doing exactly the same thing behind exactly the same kind of cheerful door. The silence is not a side effect of the trouble. The silence is a second trouble laid carefully on top of the first, heavier in some ways than the thing it hides. You keep the rule because everyone keeps it, and because the cost of breaking it feels enormous, and the cost of keeping it is invisible, which is exactly the trade the decade is built to make. The bruise heals before anyone sees it. The argument is over by morning. The report at the door is always fine, fine, everyone's fine, and the word loses a little more meaning every time it is used, until it means nothing at all except the door is closed, and please do not ask. So the family keeps its cargo, and the street keeps its calm, and the great unspoken rule does its quiet work, holding the surface smooth while the depths go untended. Someday, decades from now, people will look at the photographs of these serene streets and these pleasant doorways and assume the calm was real, that these were simply happy houses full of fine, fine people. They will be looking, without knowing it, at the single most successful piece of stagecraft the family ever pulled off, which was making the soundproofing itself invisible. Your husband puts on the grey flannel suit, catches the 7:42 train, and disappears into a city full of men in the same suit doing the same thing. He does not talk much about the work, only that there is pressure in it, a steady weight he carries home in his shoulders and sets down somewhere you cannot see. He is the provider, the single income, the one beam holding up the whole bright house. If that beam cracks, everything above it comes down, and he knows it, and he carries that knowledge to the office and back every single day. The suit is a uniform, and it is meant to be. Grey flannel, white shirt, sober tie, hat, the costume of a man who has agreed to be interchangeable. On the morning platform, the husbands stand in rows like a field of the same grey crop, each reading the same folded newspaper, each waiting for the same train into the same towers to perform the same loyal effort. Individuality is not the asset here. Reliability is. The company wants a man it can count on, and a man it can count on looks, helpfully, exactly like every other man it can count on. What the suit hides is the size of the bet riding on his shoulders. One income holds up everything: the mortgage, the car, the appliances, the lawn, the whole bright performance, and there is no second earner waiting in reserve because the wife at home is the other half of the arrangement, not a backup beam. So if he is passed over, or laid off, or simply burns out, there is no slack in the system to catch the fall. The family's entire security balances on his continued ability to put on the suit and go. He carries this the way men are taught to carry things, silently and alone. He does not bring the office fear home and lay it on the table, because his job is to be the steady one, the calm provider, the man whose worries the family never has to see. So the worry goes inward instead, into the clenched jaw, the second drink, the chest that tightens on the morning platform, the heart that, in a decade that has not yet learned to warn him, is quietly keeping its own grim ledger of the strain. There is a popular novel going around about exactly this man, the one in the grey flannel suit, the organization man who trades his soul to the company for security and a commuter ticket and wonders, on the train, what he gave up to get the lawn. It became a bestseller because it named something so many silent men on so many station platforms were feeling and could not say, which is that the breadwinner role is its own kind of cage, gilded, respectable, and locked from the inside. You see it when he comes home, the small unwinding he tries to hide, the way the shoulders drop a degree once the door is shut and the welcome drink is in his hand. You are not supposed to ask about the day in any way that requires a real answer, because the deal is that home is his refuge from all that, the calm, bright place that exists precisely so he does not have to talk about the grey towers. So you do not ask, and he does not tell, and the pressure stays sealed inside the suit where it has always lived. The two of you are running the same arrangement from opposite ends, you holding the house and he holding the income, each performing a role with no relief shift and no one to confide the strain to, each protecting the other from the full weight of it. It looks from the outside like a man simply going to work and coming home. It is, from the inside, a single beam carrying a whole structure and praying quietly that it does not crack, in a decade that mistakes that prayer for contentment. You light a cigarette in the kitchen, and there is nothing remarkable about it, because everyone lights one everywhere. They are lit at the breakfast table and the bridge table and the dinner party, in the car with the windows up and the baby in the back. The advertisements show doctors recommending them by brand, A man in a white coat assuring you that your throat will thank you. Nobody in this house thinks of the cigarette as a danger. It is a small comfort, a punctuation mark, a thing your hands do while the rest of you keeps the day running. The smoke is simply part of the air. It hangs in a flat blue layer at eye level in every room where adults gather, drifts across the card table, settles into the curtains and the upholstery and the children's hair. An ashtray sits on every surface, full and faintly volcanic, emptied and refilled like a small civic duty. A house without cigarettes would feel less like a home than like a doctor's waiting room, and even the doctor's waiting room, come to think of it, has ashtrays, and the doctors are not warning you off. They are in the advertisements posed in their white coats, declaring that more of their colleagues smoke one brand than any other, as though the preferences of physicians were a health endorsement rather than a sign that physicians too were hooked. A particular brand promises it is gentle on the throat. Another claims to aid digestion. The whole industry has draped itself in the language of medicine, and the actual medical warning, the one that will land like a thunderclap, is still years from arriving. The habit is cheap, social, and entirely respectable. Nobody is counting yet, so you smoke through everything. You smoke while you cook, the cigarette balanced on the edge of the counter, ash lengthening over the casserole. You smoke in the car with the children, windows up against the cold, the small ones breathing it in the back seat without anyone thinking twice. You smoke in the hospital, in the office, on the aeroplane, in the movie theatre, in bed. You smoke in restaurants that have no smoking section, because the entire restaurant is the smoking section, and the notion of a room set aside for not smoking would strike everyone as faintly hysterical. There is no room in the country where the answer to "may I smoke" is anything but of course. What makes it so durable is that it does not feel like a vice at all. It feels like poise. A cigarette gives nervous hands something graceful to do, marks the pause between tasks, signals that a woman is relaxed and modern and in command of her afternoon. The little ritual of it, the tap, the light, the first long exhale, is one of the few entirely reliable pleasures the day reliably delivers, and it asks nothing in return that anyone can yet see. The cost is being paid, quietly, in a currency no one is reading yet, the chests that will tighten, the coughs that will settle in and stay. The connection between this small, graceful habit and the thing that will eventually be named is sitting there in plain sight, unnoticed, the way so many of this decade's costs sit in plain sight, hidden not by secrecy but by sheer ordinariness, too common to look at directly. So you finish the cigarette, stub it into the volcanic ashtray, and light the next one, without really deciding to. Because deciding is not part of it anymore. The blue layer thickens, settling into the curtains like a tenant who has stopped paying rent. The children breathe. The doctor in the advertisement smiles his reassuring smile. And the whole bright modern household goes on inhaling its small comfort by the pack, perfectly relaxed, perfectly poised, perfectly unaware that the most dangerous thing in the kitchen tonight is not the gas range or the bleach under the sink, but the friendly little ritual in your own steady hand. You are expecting again, and the rules of this condition are simple. The doctor knows, and you do as he says. He weighs you and frowns, and tells you not to gain too much. He may hand you a prescription you do not ask about, because asking is not really part of the arrangement. You keep smoking, because no one has told you to stop. You keep your worries to yourself, because a nervous mother is a problem and a calm one is a credit to her husband. The pregnancy, like the household, is something to be managed quietly and correctly. Doctor Ostrander runs these appointments briskly. He does the measuring, the listening, the frowning at the scale, and he does the deciding, and your job is mainly to nod and follow instructions you are not invited to question. The relationship is not a conversation between two people about your body. It is a set of orders issued by an expert to a patient who is presumed to know nothing useful about the situation she is personally carrying around all day. He writes prescriptions with a brisk, confident, and incurious hand. There is a pill some doctors are giving expectant mothers now, meant to guard against losing the baby, handed over with full assurance that it is safe and modern and wise. You take it because he says to, the way you take everything he says, on faith in the white coat. No one in this room can know that this particular confident prescription will turn out, years and years from now, to have done a quiet harm to the daughters of the women who swallowed it. Today it is simply good medicine, firmly recommended. The smoking continues straight through, because the warning has not arrived, and the doctor himself has an ashtray on his desk. The occasional cocktail is considered fine, even steadying. The general theory of the era is that the mother should stay calm, stay slim, and stay out of the way of the pregnancy, which the medical men regard as their department rather than hers. Your own instincts about what your body needs are treated as charming but irrelevant, the folk wisdom of an amateur. And when the time comes, the birth itself will likely be something done to you rather than something you do. Many hospitals now offer what they call a twilight sleep, a combination of drugs that dulls the labour and erases the memory of it entirely, so that a woman goes under in pain and wakes hours later with a baby and no recollection of how it arrived. It is sold as a mercy, and in some ways it is one, and it is also one more way the central event of your life is handed over to the men in coats to manage while you are, quite literally, not present for it. Through all of it, you are expected to glow, to be grateful, to make the whole condition look as effortless as the clean kitchen and the white wash. A pregnant woman complaining is unseemly. A pregnant woman frightened is a nuisance. So you fold the fear in with everything else you fold, and you attend the brisk appointments, and you take the confident pills, and you perform the serene expectant mother the magazines have drawn for you, swollen and smiling and doing exactly as she is told. The baby will come, healthy, most likely, because most of them do, and the harms that were quietly prescribed will stay hidden for decades, and you will be told you did everything right, which by the standards of the moment you did. You followed the doctor, you stayed calm, you asked no inconvenient questions, that this was the entire definition of doing it right, that doing it right required knowing nothing and deciding nothing is not a thought anyone offers you, and not one you have been given the room to think. Your daughter is 16 and she is going steady, which is a whole system with rules as fixed as any contract. The boy comes to the door, not the curb. He meets her father, who looks at him the way a man looks at a used car. There is a curfew, and the curfew is not a suggestion. There are places they may go and places they may not, and an entire unspoken arithmetic about how far is too far that everyone has agreed to pretend is obvious. You watch the front porch from behind the curtain, doing the math along with them. Going steady has its own customs, as formal as a treaty. He gives her his class ring, which she wraps in yarn to make it fit, or his letter jacket, which she wears like a small flag of occupation, announcing to the school that she is taken and he is taken and the matter is, for now, settled. They are not engaged. They are barely allowed to be alone, but they have entered a serious, recognized and binding state with recognized obligations, and the whole social order around them treats this teenage arrangement with a surprising and watchful seriousness. The boy who arrives at the door is named Dale, and he has clearly been coached, because he removes his hat in the hall and shakes your husband's hand and calls him sir in a voice that cracks halfway through the word. Your husband, for his part, performs the ancient ritual of the inspecting father, asking where they are going and when they will be back and nodding slowly, letting the silence do the intimidating. It is theatre, mostly, but it is theatre with a real purpose, which is to remind young Dale that this house is watching. Where they go is governed by a careful geography, with exactly 2 acceptable destinations and 1 strictly forbidden one. The drive-in movie is permitted but suspect, because a car in the dark is exactly the kind of unsupervised space the whole system exists to manage. The soda fountain is safe, public, well lit, full of other watching eyes. The dance is fine if there are chaperones, and there are always chaperones, adults stationed around the gymnasium like lighthouse keepers, scanning for any couple drifting too close during the slow songs. And underneath all of it runs the arithmetic nobody says out loud, the unspoken ledger of how far is too far, a ledger that falls almost entirely on your daughter to keep. A girl is expected to be the brakes, to manage the boy's enthusiasm as well as her own, to stay exactly on the right side of a line that is never actually drawn, only enforced after the fact. The boy who pushes is just being a boy. The girl who yields has, in the merciless accounting of the neighbourhood, ruined herself. The double standard is total, and it is hers to carry. You watch from behind the curtain because you remember being on that porch, and you know the system she is moving through, the warmth of it and the trap of it both. You want her to have the sweetness, the class ring wrapped in yarn, the slow song, the boy who calls her father sir. And you want, fiercely, for her never to learn the cost of a single misstep in an era that forgives the boy everything and the girl nothing. So you stand there doing the math, hoping the curfew holds, hoping Dale stays coached, hoping she comes through these years with the sweetness and without the scar. The porch light is on, which is its own message, a small, bright announcement that this girl is watched over and accounted for. At the agreed minute, the headlights swing into the drive, and she comes up the walk on time, and you step back from the curtain before she can see you watching, and you arrange your face into someone who was definitely not waiting up. A girl down the street has gone to stay with an aunt in another state, quite suddenly, and everyone on the block understands the shape of the story without anyone telling it. She is not visiting an aunt. She is expecting, and she is unmarried, and so she has been quietly removed from view until the problem resolves itself somewhere no one can see. There are homes for this now, run by respectable organizations, and the girls who go in usually come out without the baby. The whole arrangement runs on a silence so complete it almost passes for kindness. Her name was Carol, and last month she was an ordinary 17-year-old with a letter jacket and a future, and this month she is a cautionary tale told in lowered voices over the back fence. The story changed the instant the condition was discovered, and it changed fast. The way weather changes, the warm front of a normal life replaced in an afternoon by something cold that everyone agrees not to name directly. The aunt does not exist, or exists only as a polite address to forward the lie to. The place she has actually gone is a maternity home, and there are more than 200 of them scattered across the country now, run by churches and charities with gentle names and firm policies. A girl arrives, often under a false first name, and waits out her months behind walls, hidden from her school, her town, sometimes her own younger siblings, who are told she is away on a long visit. She is fed and housed and prayed over, and she is reminded, daily and kindly and relentlessly, that the loving thing, the only thing, is to give the baby up and go home as though none of it ever happened. And most of them do. By the time a girl has spent her months inside those walls, hearing the same gentle, firm and relentless certainty repeated until it sounds like the only sane option, the great majority sign the papers and surrender the child. It is presented as her choice, and it is called her choice, but a choice offered in a locked room by everyone she depends on, with shame on one side and approval on the other, is a strange and crowded kind of choice, with a good many hands on it besides hers. The father of the baby, meanwhile, is at home, finishing school, attending the dance, his future entirely intact. No one sends him to an aunt. No one suggests he disappear for the better part of a year and return scrubbed of the event. The whole heavy machinery of secrecy and surrender is built to run on the girl alone, while the boy walks through it untouched, which is the same merciless double standard from the front porch, only grown up now and wearing the face of social welfare. What makes it almost unbearable to watch is how reasonable everyone is about it. There are no villains stomping around. There are kind matrons and concerned mothers and respectable organizations, all genuinely believing they are rescuing a girl from ruin and a baby into a better life. The cruelty is not in anyone's intentions. It is in the arrangement itself, smooth and well-meaning and quietly devastating, separating a young mother from a child and calling the wound a fresh start. Carol will come home in the spring, thinner, quieter, with a story about her aunt's lovely garden that everyone will accept and no one will believe, and she will be expected to pick her life back up exactly where it dropped, as if a person could do that. The block will welcome her back into the silence that sent her away. And somewhere across a state line, a baby she held once will grow up not knowing her name, on the far side of a kindness so complete that it managed, with the best intentions in the world, to break two hearts at once and call it help. There is a word the family uses when a wife stops being able to hold the performance together, and the word is nerves. She has nerves. She is tired. She needs to rest. The vocabulary is soft and vague on purpose, a set of gentle phrases laid down over something nobody wants to name directly. You have watched a neighbour go quiet over months, then go still, then go somewhere for a while, and you have heard it described every time in the same low, careful, managed tones, as if naming it plainly might make it contagious. The language is a marvel of avoidance. A man might have troubles, but a woman has nerves, and the difference is everything, because nerves are framed as a small feminine malfunction, a temperament running slightly hot, rather than a person buckling under a load that any creature would buckle under. Nerves can be soothed with a pill from the kitchen drawer, or a rest, or a firm word about counting her blessings. Nerves do not require anyone to ask what, precisely, she is so nervous about. Because the honest answer would be inconvenient. She is alone in a clean house for 10 hours a day with no adult to speak to. She is doing invisible work that earns no wage and no praise, only the silent demerit of any visible failure. She has been told that this life is the fulfillment of every female dream, and she cannot understand why fulfillment feels so much like a slow, grey and suffocating drowning, and she suspects, with horror, that the defect must be in her. That whole weather system gets compressed by the family into one small tidy word. Nerves. You watched it happen to Dot, 3 houses down, over the better part of a year. First, she stopped coming to bridge, with apologies. Then she stopped answering the door some afternoons, the curtains drawn at noon. Then her sister came to stay, and the children got quieter, and the husband's face took on the careful blankness of a man managing something he will not discuss. The whole street observed the descent through its windows and described it, to one another, entirely in euphemism. Poor Dot, her nerves, such a shame. Nobody intervened, because intervening would require naming it, and naming it would break the great rule that everything stays inside the house. So the neighbourhood watched a woman come apart in slow motion and responded with covered dishes left on the step and sympathetic murmurs, and not one single direct question, because a direct question might have gotten a direct answer, and a direct answer was the one thing the whole system was built to prevent. The softness of the word is its cruelty. If they called it despair, someone might have to take it seriously, might have to ask whether the life itself, rather than the woman living it, was the thing that had malfunctioned. But nerves keeps the trouble safely located inside her, a personal weakness, a wifely flaw, something to be quietly medicated or rested or sent away, never something the bright arrangement out there could possibly have caused. The word protects the arrangement by blaming the woman, gently, with a sympathetic cluck. So you learn the vocabulary along with everyone else, and you use it when you must, and you feel the small cold space it opens up every time. Because you know, watching Dot's drawn curtains at noon, that nerves is not a diagnosis. It is a door, a soft and pleasant door, and you have begun to understand where it leads when a woman is finally ushered through it to go away and rest. And you hope, with a quiet ferocity you tell no one, that you are never the one they start describing in those low, careful, managed tones. When a woman is sent away to rest, you are not told where she goes, but the grown-ups know, and the knowing sits heavy under the politeness. She goes to a place with quiet halls and locked doors, where the rest on offer is not the kind you choose. There are treatments there with clinical names and metal in them, things done to the mind through the body, meant to make a difficult woman calm and a sad woman pleasant. She comes back changed, or she comes back smaller, and the family says only that she is feeling much better now. The place has a soothing name, something with the word retreat or rest or pines in it, and a long drive lined with trees, and a lobby that could pass for a pleasant hotel right up until you notice the doors only open from one side. It is sold to the family as a haven, a quiet spot for a tired woman to recover her composure, and some of it genuinely is quiet, and some of the people in it are genuinely kind. But it is not a hotel, and the rest it provides is the kind that is administered rather than taken. The central treatment of the moment passes a current through the brain to reset it, like a man kicking a stubborn radio, and the woman wakes from it foggy and bruised in the memory, missing patches of her own life. It is done with confidence and good intentions and not much idea of how it actually works, on the cheerful theory that a mind which has stopped cooperating can simply be jolted back into line. Some women are helped by it, some are emptied by it. The same switch is thrown either way, and which result you get is closer to luck than to medicine. And there is a further door past that one, a quick procedure that quiets a troublesome mind for good, the same one the travelling doctors offer for unruly children, applied here to wives who will not settle. A husband at the end of his patience, advised by a confident man in a white coat that this is the modern remedy, might sign for it. The woman who comes back from that one is unfailingly calm, agreeable, and easy to live with, in the particular way that a house is easy to live in once someone has quietly turned off the music. What lands hardest is how little it takes to be sent. You did not have to be raving. You had to be inconvenient. A wife who wept too much, or argued too often, or simply went flat and stopped performing the bright role, could be defined as ill by the people whose comfort her illness disturbed, and handed to an institution to be adjusted back into something pleasant. The bar for a woman being declared unwell was set, conveniently, at exactly the height of being difficult to live with. Even the famous families did this, quietly, to daughters who embarrassed them, sending a girl who was merely willful or slow off for a procedure, and then off to a distant institution, and then off the family record altogether, a person erased into a rumour. If it happened behind those gates, with all that money and all those names, you understand exactly how easily it happens behind an ordinary door, on an ordinary street, to an ordinary dot whose curtains have been drawn at noon for a year. So when the family says a woman has gone away to rest, you hear the whole sentence now, the one underneath the polite one. You hope she is in the kind hands and not the careless ones. You hope she comes back herself and not a quieter copy of herself. And you file away, in the cold private place where you keep the things you cannot say, the knowledge that the line between a wife and a patient, in this decade, is drawn not by how sick she is, but by how much trouble she has become to the people watching her from the other side of the locked door. There is an uncle in the family who never married, and the family has built a careful little fiction around him that everyone maintains and no one examines. He is a confirmed bachelor. He has his work, his apartment in the city, his particular friend who is always just a roommate. You have learned, without being taught, that there are questions you do not ask him, subjects the conversation steers around the way a car steers around a hole in the road. The fiction protects him, and it isolates him. And in this decade, those two things are the same arrangement. Uncle Ray arrives for holidays alone, always alone, though everyone knows there is someone he does not bring, as someone referred to, when referred to at all, as his roommate, a word doing the heaviest lifting of any word in the family vocabulary. He is funny and kind and good with the children, the favourite uncle, generous, warm and quick to laugh, the one who remembers what you said last year. And there is a sealed room in his life that the whole family has silently agreed to walk past without looking, year after year, plate after plate of holiday turkey. The fiction has rules, and the rules are enforced by everyone at once without a meeting. You do not ask why he never settled down. You do not ask about the roommate beyond a polite and bloodless "how is he?" You accept the apartment in the city as simply where Ray lives, never wondering aloud why a man would arrange a whole life so far from the family, in a place where a certain kind of person can be a little less careful, among others like him. The questions are all available. They are simply never picked up. What makes the fiction necessary is that the truth, spoken plainly, would be dangerous in this decade, in a way that is hard to overstate. The thing Ray is not merely frowned upon, it is listed in the medical manuals as a disorder, named in the law as a crime, treated by the better hospitals with shocks and worse. To say it out loud would not just embarrass the family, it could cost Ray his job, his freedom, his standing, everything, in an afternoon. So the family does the one kindness available to it, which is to say nothing, very loudly, forever. The kindness is real, and the unkindness is sewn right into it, because the same silence that shields him also seals him off. He can never bring the someone to dinner. He can never be congratulated, or asked after, or fully known. He sits at the family table as a beloved man with a locked centre, present and partial, included and alone, and the family's careful blindness, offered as protection, also informs him that the realest thing about his life is the one thing this table will never let through the door. The children absorb the whole arrangement without a single word of instruction, which is how the deepest lessons always travel. They learn that Uncle Ray is wonderful, and that there is a question you do not ask, and that some people come with a sealed room, and that the polite thing is to never try the handle. They will carry this etiquette of the unmentioned into the next generation, fluent in a silence no one ever explained to them, simply having breathed it in along with the cigarette smoke. So Ray comes for the holidays, alone, and the family loves him in the only dialect available to it, the dialect of things left unsaid, of the chair that is never set for the roommate, of the warm welcome that stops politely at the locked door. He laughs at the table and is laughed with. He goes back to the city on Sunday, back to the someone the family will never meet, and everyone waves him off with real affection and a fiction intact. Having spent another holiday loving a man they have agreed, out of kindness, never fully to see. For the family members who carry a certain secret, the danger is not abstract, and it does not stay safely in the home. A man can lose his job over it, his standing, his freedom, because the government itself is hunting for people like him and calling them risks. The official manuals list what he is as an illness, The newspapers list it as a scandal. So he watches his hands, his voice, the way he stands, the words he chooses, performing an ordinary life with a vigilance that never gets to rest, because being found out costs everything at once. The hunting is organized and official, not just the cruelty of gossips. The same suspicious decade that is rooting out one kind of supposed subversive has decided that men like Uncle Ray are a security risk too, liable to be blackmailed, unfit to be trusted, and so investigators comb through government offices and beyond, looking for the telltale signs, and thousands of careers simply end, quietly, with a man cleaning out his desk and never being told why in writing. There is a name for this purge, and it sits right alongside the more famous one in the headlines. So Ray lives a life of constant, exhausting performance, far more total than the wife's morning lipstick or the husband's grey suit. He maintains a cover story for the office, perhaps a vague, long-ago heartbreak to explain the absent wife. He keeps the someone entirely separate, never named at work, never photographed on the desk, a whole human being filed permanently under the heading of nobody. He learns to laugh at the jokes told at the expense of men like him, because not laughing would be a kind of confession, and he swallows that particular humiliation so often it stops having a taste. The vigilance reaches into everything. A glance held a second too long, a wrist held a degree too loose, the wrong inflection on the wrong word. He audits himself constantly, running a quiet internal censor over every gesture before it leaves his body, because any of these small natural things, unguarded, could be the thread someone pulls. Imagine living every public hour as if a single relaxed moment could detonate your entire life. And then imagine doing it for decades, and you have some sense of the weather Ray lives inside while passing, to the office, as merely a pleasant private man. The cost is paid in a currency that does not show on any ledger. The loneliness of never being fully known by anyone but the someone. The quiet, chronic, and constant hum of fear under the good days. The exhaustion of a performance with no intermission and no curtain, running every waking minute in every public room. The wife performs her role and gets to take the apron off at night. Ray never takes his off, because the consequence of being caught out of costume is not a disappointed bridge club but a ruined life. And the worst of it is the message the whole arrangement beats into him daily, that the realest part of who he is must be treated as a danger, a defect, a thing to be hidden and managed, and, the doctors would say, cured. He is offered, if discovered, not understanding but treatment, the shocks and the aversion and the institution, all aimed at editing him into someone the decade finds acceptable. The kindest thing the world openly offers a man like Ray is the chance to be erased and replaced with a quieter, emptier version that the manuals would approve. So he watches his hands, and he keeps his cover, and he goes carefully through a world built to catch him, and he comes to the family holidays where at least the danger is only silence and not arrest. You understand now why the city, why the apartment, why the someone who is never brought. Ray is not hiding because he is ashamed. Ray is hiding because the alternative, in this decade, is to be hunted, and he has simply made the rational, exhausting, lifelong choice to survive in the only disguise the times will allow him. Suppose the marriage has failed, truly failed, gone cold and mean and unfixable. You learn, when you look into it, that wanting out is not nearly enough. The law does not let you simply leave. You must prove that he did something, named and provable, a cruelty or a betrayal you can carry into a courtroom and lay on a table. Without that proof, there is no door. So couples who both want out sometimes arrange the evidence between them, staging a wrong so the law will permit a thing they have already privately agreed to. You sit across a desk from a lawyer, and he explains it gently, the way you would explain a hard rule to a child. There is no such thing yet as simply growing apart, no clean exit for two people who have slowly become strangers and would like to stop. The law requires a guilty party and an innocent one, a villain and a victim, and it will not dissolve a marriage on the honest grounds that the marriage is over. You cannot file for sadness. You cannot file for emptiness. You must file for a crime against the union with a name and a date. So a strange theatre develops in the lawyers' offices. A couple that has agreed, amicably, to part must invent the necessary villainy, and since adultery is the surest grounds, the husband sometimes arranges to be discovered by a conveniently present witness in a hotel room with a woman hired for the afternoon to sit on the edge of a bed and look guilty. Nothing happens in the room but the taking of the photograph. The whole sordid little scene is staged purely so the court can be handed the lie it requires before it will grant the truth. The expense and the humiliation of all this fall hardest, as usual, on the wife. A divorced woman wears a permanent mark in this decade, no matter how the papers were drawn, regarded as a failure at the one job assigned to her, eyed warily by the other wives, a cautionary figure at the edge of the bridge club rather than a member of it. And she steps out of the marriage into the financial wilderness already described, with no credit in her own name and a world that treats her competence as a rumour, free at last and stranded at the same moment. Which means that for a great many women, the exit is technically there and practically sealed. To leave requires money she does not independently have, grounds she may not be able to prove, a public shaming she will carry for life, and a leap into a society arranged to punish exactly the leap she is making. Faced with that arithmetic, many simply stay, not because the marriage is bearable, but because the exit is engineered to be worse, and endurance starts to look, grimly, like the sensible choice. The whole apparatus is built on the unspoken belief that marriages should be hard to end, that making the door narrow keeps families intact, as though a family held together purely by the impossibility of leaving were the same thing as a family that is well. The law confuses the cage for the bond. It counts every couple that could not afford to leave as a marriage saved, and files the misery under success, and congratulates itself on the low divorce rate it has manufactured by bolting the only exit shut. Someday, a state out west will be the first to allow a couple to part without staging a crime, to simply declare the thing unworkable and go, and the narrow bolted door will slowly widen across the country. But that is years off, and it does you no good now, standing in a marriage you cannot prove your way out of, doing the cold, careful, and hopeless arithmetic at the kitchen table. So you tuck this knowledge away with the rest, the way you tuck everything, and you wipe down the counter, and you do not let the bridge club catch you at the kitchen table with a pencil and a long column of figures. When the trouble in a house turns physical, a woman in this decade discovers how alone she is with it. There is no number to call that treats it as a crime. The police, if they come at all, call it a domestic matter and suggest everyone calm down. There is no shelter to go to, because the shelters have not been built yet. The priest counsels patience. The mother counsels endurance. The whole machinery around her is built to keep the marriage standing, and so the woman learns to manage the danger the way she manages everything else, privately and without help. The law is the first wall, and it is built to face away from her. What happens to her at home is not, in the eyes of the courts, the same as what would happen to her on the street. A blow that would be assault from a stranger becomes a private disagreement when it comes from a husband, the kind of thing the law would rather not involve itself in. There is not even a name yet for a husband forcing himself on a wife, because the statutes define the crime as something only a stranger can commit. Inside the marriage, the law has quietly looked away. So when the police do come, summoned by a frightened neighbour or a desperate call, they arrive to keep the peace, not to make an arrest. They take the husband out to the porch and let him cool off. They ask her, not unkindly, whether things are really so bad, whether she might have provoked it, whether she would not prefer to settle this between themselves like grown-ups. Then they leave, and the two people are alone again in the house, and the only thing that has changed is that he now knows the neighbours heard. The institutions she might turn to all point the same direction, which is back inside. The minister reminds her that marriage is for better and worse, and that her endurance is a virtue. Her own mother, who survived something similar by enduring it, tells her that this is simply what marriage sometimes is, that she made her bed, that a wife holds the family together no matter the cost to herself. Every door she knocks on opens onto the same advice, delivered gently, which is to go home and try harder and say less, and the exit door, the one marked divorce, is the narrow bolted one from before. To leave she would need grounds she can prove, money she does not have in her own name, and the willingness to wear the permanent mark of a failed wife in a neighbourhood that forgives the husband and blames her. The whole arrangement forms a kind of sealed room, the law looking away, the institutions pointing back inside, the finances bolted, the social cost aimed entirely at her, every wall of it constructed, supposedly in the name of protecting the family. So she does what the decade leaves her to do, which is to become an expert in weather she should never have had to study. She learns the signs, the particular silence that precedes the bad nights, the way to keep the children quiet and out of the path, the careful management of a constant, private, and unspeakable danger she is forbidden to name aloud or escape. She covers what shows. She gives the doorstep its bright and instant fine. She carries this, the heaviest thing of all, the way she carries the rest, somewhere no visitor will ever be shown. This is the place where the bright performance costs the most, and it is the place the cheerful brochure of the decade never mentions. Behind some of the calmest doors on the serenest streets, a woman is keeping a secret that the law, the church, the bank, and her own mother have all conspired, each for its own respectable reason, to make impossible to set down. Someday there will be shelters and hotlines and laws that follow the harm through the front door. But that is later, and she is here now, alone in a quiet house, managing. Your children come home from school having practiced for the end of the world, and they treat it as casually as a fire drill. They have learned to duck and cover, to drop under the wooden desk and fold their small arms over their necks at the flash, taught by a cheerful cartoon turtle who does the same. They demonstrate it for you on the kitchen floor, proud of getting it right. You watch your son curl under the table against a thing no table could stop, and you praise him for it, because that is the script you have both been handed. The turtle is the genius and the madness of the whole thing in one friendly package. His name is Bert, and he wears a little helmet, and in the film they show at school he calmly tucks into his shell whenever danger flashes, while a jaunty song instructs the children to do as Bert does. He is adorable, he is reassuring. He is also teaching small children to assume the crash position for an atomic bomb, which is a sentence that should not be able to exist, and yet there he is, singing, helmet on, perfectly cheerful about the apocalypse. Your son has absorbed the drill completely and performs it with pride, because to a 7-year-old it is simply another thing the grown-ups want done correctly, like washing behind the ears. He does not understand what the flash would actually be. He thinks of it the way he thinks of the fire drill, a brief exciting interruption with a clear set of motions, after which everyone goes back to arithmetic. The desk, to him, is genuine protection. He has not done the physics. He is 7. He should not have to. You, however, have done the physics, or enough of it to know that a wooden desk is not going to be the deciding factor in a nuclear exchange. You know that the drill is less a real defense than a way to give everyone something to do with their hands in the face of a fear too large to hold, a set of motions to perform so the helplessness has a shape. It is the national version of your own bright doorstep fine, a small, competent, and comforting ritual laid carefully over an enormous, unspeakable dread. And that is the strangest weight of this decade's parenting, the requirement to hand your child a fear you cannot protect him from and then coach him to be calm about it. You cannot tell him the truth, that the desk is theatre, because the truth would terrify him to no purpose. So you praise the tuck, you admire the folded arms, you play along with the comforting fiction that there is a correct set of motions that makes the unthinkable survivable. You teach him the drill and swallow what you know. The children, mercifully, are mostly fine with it. They fold the dread into the ordinary texture of school, somewhere between the spelling test and the lunch line, and most of them do not lie awake over it. It is the parents who lie awake, the ones who understand exactly what the drill is rehearsing, who tuck a child into bed at night having watched him that afternoon practice surviving the destruction of everything. The turtle made it cute. It was never cute. It was a country teaching its smallest people to crouch. So your son demonstrates his duck and cover on the kitchen linoleum one more time, beaming, and you clap, and you tell him he did it just right, and you mean the clap even as the rest of you goes quietly cold. Then he is up and off to play, the drill forgotten as fast as it was performed, a child again, and you stand in the kitchen with the knowledge he does not have, which is that you would give anything to make the desk be true, and that the most you can actually offer him is the same thing the turtle offers, which is a calm voice and a set of motions and the hope that the flash never comes. Some families on the block are putting shelters in the ground, and the salesmen come around with brochures the way they come around with brochures for anything else. A shelter is a thing you can buy now, steel or concrete, sunk into the backyard between the rose bed and the property line. You stock it the way you stock a pantry, with canned beans and bottled water and a hand-crank radio, and you try not to think too hard about the day you would actually climb down into it. Survival, in this decade, has become one more item on the shopping list. The salesman is the same breed of salesman who sold you the washer and the encyclopedia set, cheerful, thorough, and unbothered, spreading his brochure on your kitchen table with a flourish. He has models. He has financing. He shows you the deluxe unit with the bunks and the ventilation and the little chemical toilet, and the economy unit for the budget-conscious end of the world, and he discusses the apocalypse in the tone he would use for patio furniture, because to him that is precisely what it is, a product with features and a price. The ones who buy build them quietly, a hole appearing in the backyard one week and a steel hatch the next, and then everyone on the street has to decide how to feel about the neighbour who is now prepared to outlive them. The shelter is a strange new status object, the grimmest possible entry in the keeping up with the neighbours tournament, a way of announcing that your family intends to make it to the other side of something nobody can quite picture. The lawn says, "We are doing fine." The hatch in the lawn says we expect not to be soon, and we have planned ahead. Then you stock it, which is where the whole enterprise curdles into the surreal. You walk the grocery aisle choosing cans not for dinner but for the aftermath, calculating how many days of beans a family needs to wait out the unsurvivable, adding a hand-crank radio to listen to a world that may not be broadcasting. You are doing ordinary domestic planning, the same skill you use for a week of suppers, pointed at an event that would end weeks and suppers, and the whole concept of a Tuesday. The pantry of the end of the world, organized by a woman who alphabetizes her spices. And the magazines, helpfully, raise the question nobody wants raised, which is what you do when the bomb falls and your unprepared neighbour, the one who spent his shelter money on the new car, comes pounding on your hatch begging to be let in. The articles debate it with a straight face. Are you entitled to keep him out? Are you entitled even to shoot him? To defend your family's beans and bunks against the man you waved to on Sunday? That this is a question the era discusses calmly, over coffee, tells you everything about the weather the families are living under. The shelter mostly sits unused. A damp concrete room filling with spiders and the smell of cold earth, the beans approaching their expiration in the dark. The children treat it as a clubhouse when the parents are not looking. For all the planning, it is less a real defence than the duck and cover desk grown to family size, a set of motions and provisions laid over a dread too big to hold, a way of feeling that you have done something in the face of a thing against which there is very little to be done. So the hatch sits in the lawn, and the family goes on with its bright days above it, mowing the grass over the buried room where the beans wait. You hope, the way you hope about the desk and the flash, that the whole expensive, grim preparation turns out to have been unnecessary, that the radio is never cranked, that the hatch is never sealed from the inside. It is the only item on the shopping list you have ever hoped to waste your money on. Every summer brings the fear back, and the fear has a name, and the name is polio. You read the case counts in the paper the way you read the weather, watching them climb as the weather warms. You keep the children away from the public pool, away from the crowded matinee, away from other people's kitchens and birthday parties. A headache or a stiff neck stops your heart in your chest. The disease takes children in the warm months, leaves some of them in braces or in the iron lung, and there is, as yet, nothing you can do but keep yours home and hope. The terrible part is how little anyone understands about how it travels. The doctors are not sure. The newspapers offer theories that change by the week. It seems to come with the heat, to cluster around crowds and water, to strike without pattern, choosing this child and sparing the one beside him for no reason anyone can name. And so the fear has no edges, nothing solid to push against, just a vague, formless and dreadful sense that it could be anywhere the children are, in the pool, in the popcorn, on the hand of the friend they just shook. The worst year of it filled the hospitals to bursting. In a single bad summer, the country counted nearly 58,000 cases, thousands of them fatal, tens of thousands left with some lasting paralysis, and every one of those numbers was a child like yours, fine at breakfast and frightening by supper. The arithmetic of it sits in every mother's chest all season, a quiet running tally of the things she is trying, with pool bans and cancelled parties, to keep her own family out of. The image that haunts the decade is the iron lung, the long metal cylinder that breathes for a child who can no longer breathe alone, the small face protruding from one end, the machine sighing in and out around the body it has taken over. Pictures of wards full of them run in the magazines. No mother who has seen one ever quite unsees it, and the picture rides along behind every summer headache, every complaint of a sore neck, every too quiet afternoon when a child lies down who would normally be running. So you become a warden for 3 months a year, and you hate it, and you do it anyway. You say no to the pool on the hottest day of the year, while your child looks at you like you have lost your mind. You skip the crowded fair. You watch the neighbour children for symptoms with a vigilance that would be rude if everyone were not doing exactly the same thing. The summer, which should belong to children, becomes a season of small confinements, all of them stacked against a danger you cannot see and cannot fight, only avoid. There is no tidy way to hold a fear like this, no doorstep fine that covers it, because this one is not about reputation or performance. This is the rawest thing a parent carries, the simple terror of a healthy child suddenly not, and against it the bright, competent decade has, for now, almost nothing to offer. No drill, no product, no procedure, just the paper with its climbing numbers and the pool you will not let them near and the long hot wait for the season to turn. So you keep them in, and you check their necks, and you flinch at every headache, and you carry the season's dread folded in with all the others, heavier than most because it is aimed at the children, and you cannot buy or clean or perform your way out of it. The summer drags, the numbers climb and fall, and every September that your own children come through whole, running and sunburned, and entirely unaware of the watch you kept, you feel a relief so total it leaves you shaking at the sink, until the next warm spring brings the fear quietly back around. Then comes the morning the radio says they have done it, that a man named Salk has made a vaccine and it works, and the whole country seems to exhale at once. Church bells ring in some towns. Strangers weep a little. You line the children up at the school or the clinic for their shots, and for once the long wait is a hopeful one, a line moving toward relief instead of away from danger. It is a rare, clean victory in a decade that hides most of its troubles, and for a season you let yourself feel it. The announcement comes in the spring, and the way the news travels tells you how much fear it is lifting. It does not arrive as a small medical item buried in the paper. It arrives like the end of a war. The radio interrupts itself to say it. People come out onto porches. In some towns, the church bells ring in the middle of an ordinary weekday, the sexton hauling on the rope for no funeral and no service, just the plain, enormous fact that the thing that took the children has finally met its match. You had almost forgotten what relief on this scale feels like, because the decade specializes in dread you are not allowed to discuss, and here is a dread that everyone shared openly, and that is now, suddenly, lifting in plain view. The man who made it becomes an instant national hero, and when he is asked who owns the thing, who will profit from it, he says, more or less, that it belongs to the people, that you might as well patent the sun. Even the cynics, of whom the decade has plenty, are briefly disarmed. So you take the children to be vaccinated, and the line at the school gymnasium is long and it does not bother you at all, because this is the good line, the one that ends in protection rather than a verdict. The children are more interested in whether the shot will hurt than in what it means, which is exactly as it should be, because the meaning is yours to carry and the not understanding is the gift you have been trying to give them all along. A nurse swabs a small arm. The needle goes in, a child winces and is brave and gets a lollipop, and a terror that ruled every summer quietly loosens its grip on your house. The numbers, over the next few years, do the thing you almost cannot believe. The towering case counts that filled the hospitals begin to fall and keep falling, until the disease that emptied the swimming pools becomes a rare thing, then almost a memory, then a story you tell children who cannot imagine being kept inside all summer for fear of a headache. You lived through the before, you will live in the after. Very few troubles in this decade resolve so cleanly, with a clear villain defeated, and the children, this time, saved. It matters, this one, in a way worth pausing on, because so much of the dark side of these years is the slow, quiet kind, the medicated afternoons and the bolted exits and the secrets these houses keep, troubles that do not get a vaccine or a victory. This one did. This one was a fear that science actually reached the bottom of and pulled the family out. So you let yourself feel the simple, clean and uncomplicated good of it, because the decade does not hand them out often. So the shot is given, the arm is rubbed, the lollipop is unwrapped, and you walk your children back out into a spring that has lost one of its terrors for good. There will be other fears, the slow kind, the kind no needle reaches, but not this one, not anymore. And tonight when you check on the sleeping children, you will not be checking their necks, only their blankets, and that small change in what a mother's hand reaches for in the dark is, all by itself, a kind of miracle you do not intend to take for granted. There is a new carefulness in how grown-ups talk, and you feel it settle over the dinner table and the back fence. A man can be ruined now for the wrong opinion, the wrong old friend, the wrong book on the shelf, and the ruin can come from a neighbour's quiet word to the wrong office. So conversation learns to walk softly. You keep certain views to yourself. You notice who is listening. The country is teaching itself a domestic kind of caution, where the safest thing to have at the table is no strong opinion at all. The fear has a flavour that gets into everything, even the small talk. A senator has made a career of waving lists of names and asking the famous question about what people once believed or once belonged to, and the question has trickled all the way down from the government to the office to the dinner party until ordinary people have learned to flinch at it. You do not have to be a spy to be afraid. You only have to have a past, a friend, a signed petition from years ago, a book that looked interesting at the time. The ruin, when it comes, often comes from close by, which is the part that poisons the street. A man does not usually fall because a distant agency discovered him. He falls because someone he knows, a co-worker, a neighbour, a sour acquaintance with a grudge, mentioned something to someone, and the mention travelled, and the next thing he knows his loyalty is in question, and his job is gone, and no one will quite tell him who said what. The informer is not a stranger in a trench coat. The informer is the man who borrows your ladder. So conversation adapts, the way water adapts to a narrower pipe. People learn to talk around things, to test the room before venturing an opinion, to keep the real views for the few they truly trust, and offer everyone else a bland, agreeable surface. At the dinner party, the talk stays on exactly 4 recognized subjects: the lawn, the car, the children, and the weather. All of it safe and shared and unprovocative, because anything sharper might be remembered and repeated and held against you in a season when belonging is safety and standing out is risk. Your own husband is careful at the office in a way he never used to be, watching what he signs, whom he is seen with, what magazines are visible on his desk. He has seen a colleague vanish over something murky, escorted out with his box, and the lesson landed without anyone needing to say it aloud. The whole workplace has learned to keep its head down, to volunteer nothing, to treat enthusiasm of any unapproved kind as a luxury that a man with a mortgage cannot afford. It fits the decade perfectly, this caution. The same front door that holds in the drinking and the debt learns to hold in your opinions too. Keep the surface smooth. Volunteer no trouble. Give the room its bland and instant fine. The same family that hides its drinking and its debt and its difficult child now also hides its opinions, tucks its politics away with everything else it has learned not to say, and presents to the street a calm, bland, and agreeable face that goes along with whatever the street goes along with. So the table talk stays light, and the views stay private, and a low, careful watchfulness becomes simply part of how a sensible family carries itself in these years. It does not feel like tyranny. It feels like prudence, like good manners, like not making trouble. That is what makes it so effective and so quietly corrosive, the way it dresses up as politeness, until a whole country has agreed, in the name of getting along, to say a little less than it thinks at every table on every street, including this one. There is a column in the magazine you read every month, and it is called "Can This Marriage Be Saved?" And you have noticed that the answer is always yes. A wife writes in about a husband who drinks or strays or rages or simply vanishes into himself, and the experts study the case, and the verdict comes back gentle and firm. The marriage can be saved. It can be saved by the wife understanding him better, wanting less, complaining little, adjusting herself by degrees until the friction stops. The husband is rarely the one asked to change. The column has a comforting format, repeated every month like a hymn, and you read it at the kitchen table with your coffee going cold and the radio turned low. First the wife's side, the litany of small and large griefs, the husband who never talks, the money that disappears, the temper, the coldness. Then the husband's side, often a list of how the wife has failed to make the home pleasant enough to come back to. Then the calm, measured, and reasonable voice of the counsellor, weighing both and arriving, with a kindly inevitability, at a set of adjustments for the wife to make. You could write the ending before you reach it. You usually do. What the column never says, in all its years of cases, is that some marriages should not be saved. That door does not exist on its pages. However grim the situation a wife describes, the conclusion bends toward preservation, toward her learning to meet his needs more skillfully, toward the idea that a difficult marriage is a problem in her technique rather than a verdict on the union. The column is not really advice. It is a monthly demonstration that the wife is the part of the machine that is expected to flex. Read enough of them and the shape underneath shows through, and it is the shape of a returns counter. The marriage is the product, and it must not be returned, and so every complaint is handled by gently locating the fault in the customer. You are holding it wrong. You expected too much. Have you tried being more understanding of the product's needs? The wife writes in as a person in pain and is answered as a user who has not properly mastered the appliance she is bound to for life. And the women read it by the millions, because it is one of the few places the troubles of the front rooms get spoken of at all, even in this managed and one-sided way. There is a grim comfort in seeing your own marriage's troubles in print, in learning you are not the only wife whose husband drinks or rages or disappears. The column breaks the silence just enough to be a relief, and then immediately uses the opening to hand you, once again, the responsibility for fixing it alone. Your friend mentioned, lightly, over coffee, that she had thought of writing in, and the two of you laughed it off, but you both understood it was not entirely a joke. Where else would she turn? Not to the police, who call it a domestic matter. Not to the divorce court, with its bolted door. Not to the bridge club, which would only file the news away. The magazine is the closest thing to a confidential ear the decade offers a wife, and its confidential ear belongs, in the end, to the institution of marriage rather than to her. So you read the column each month, and you recognize the format, and you notice the verdict, and you feel the small relief and the larger weight of it both. Can this marriage be saved? The answer is always yes, and the cost is always hers, and the question the column never prints, the one that would change everything, is whether a marriage that survives only by the steady erasure of the wife is really the thing being saved at all, or only the smooth, photographable shell of one, propped up nicely for the magazine to admire. Your daughter takes a class at school called Home Economics, and you understand that her real future is being assembled in that room. She learns to bake, to budget, to set a table, to plan a week of meals, to keep a husband fed and a house running. The boys take shop and learn a trade. The girls learn to be the trade. Nobody pretends otherwise, and the school does not hide it. The whole curriculum points your daughter at the same destination you arrived at, the apron and the kitchen and the front door waiting for a car. The class is thorough and entirely sincere. Miss Quimby, who teaches it, demonstrates the proper folding of a fitted sheet with the gravity of a woman diffusing a bomb, and the girls copy the motion, and a grade is given, though approximately 3 of them will ever fold it that well again. They practice a balanced menu and a tidy budget, and the correct way to remove a stain and receive a husband at the end of his day. It is real knowledge, useful knowledge, the actual operating manual of the life ahead. It is also the only manual the girls are handed, while the boys down the hall are handed several, because that is the quiet part. The boys are learning things that branch outward, the metal shop and the wood shop and the mathematics that lead to a dozen possible futures, a job, a trade, a career, a choice. The girls are learning the one thing that leads to the one place. Their curriculum does not branch, it funnels. Every skill points the same direction, toward a household exactly like this one, so that by graduation a girl is superbly equipped for precisely one life, and gently unequipped for any other. The colleges, for the girls who go, often run on the same hidden syllabus. A young woman attends and studies and is understood by everyone, including herself, to be partly there to meet the husband who will make the rest of the schooling moot. There is a joke about it, the degree that matters most being the one that changes her last name, and like the best jokes of the decade, it is funny because it is simply true, and a little chilling once you stop laughing. You watch your daughter come home proud of an A in the class, having mastered the 7-minute frosting and the hospital corner, and you feel 2 things at once that will not resolve into one. Pride, because she is capable, and the skills are real and she did the work well. And a small cold draft of something else, because you can see the funnel she is moving down, the same one you moved down, and you know exactly where it lets out, and you are not certain anymore that you want her to arrive precisely where you did, equipped for one life and quietly fitted for no other. You do not say this to her, because saying it would require an alternative, and the decade has not really stocked the shelves with alternatives a mother could point to. What would you tell her to be instead? The paths are not built yet, or they are narrow and lonely and lead through doors that do not open easily for women. So you keep the cold draft to yourself, press it down with the rest, and praise the frosting, because the frosting is genuinely good and the praise is genuinely earned, and the funnel is not her fault or yours. So she practices her hospital corners and plans her tidy menus and learns to be the trade, the way you did, the way her daughters might if nothing changes. Miss Quimby gives out the grades. The boys build their branching futures down the hall. And your bright, capable, and willing girl is prepared, expertly and lovingly and entirely, for the one life the school can imagine for her, walking toward the apron and the kitchen and the front door with a report card full of skills and a horizon drawn, by careful hands, very close in. Your friend is hosting a party, and the party turns out to be a sales floor with refreshments. The bowls are everywhere, the colourful plastic ones with the lids that burp, and your friend demonstrates each one with the practiced cheer of a woman who is earning a small commission on your afternoon. You will buy something, because everyone buys something, because saying no would cost more in the friendship than the bowls cost at the table. The social circle and the sales territory have quietly become the same map, and you all keep selling each other things over coffee. The genius of the arrangement, from the company's point of view, is that it does not need stores or salesmen, because it has wives and friendships. Connie does not sell the bowls to strangers. She sells them to her friends, in her own living room, using the trust between you as the sales floor and the obligation of friendship as the close. You came for an afternoon with women you like. You are leaving with a salad keeper you did not know you needed, and Connie is leaving with a few dollars and a quota inched forward. The bowls themselves are demonstrated like small miracles. Connie holds up a bowl and burps the lid to show the airtight seal, drops a sealed one to show it will not spill, recites the colours and the sizes and the lifetime of freshness they promise, and the other women murmur appreciatively, because the social script requires appreciation. It is half tea party and half infomercial, and everyone present understands both halves perfectly and pretends to notice only the first. The order form circulates with the coffee cake, gathering signatures like a petition no one dares refuse, and nobody's pencil hesitates for long. The woman from the cosmetics company works the same trick by a different door, the one who rings your bell with her sample case and her bright, determined smile, turning the neighbourhood into a route and the neighbours into a list. She is pleasant, and she is relentless, and she is also often a wife who needs the small income and is not supposed to admit she needs it, threading a real financial need through a script about lipstick, because the script about lipstick is the only one the decade has handed her for earning $1 of her own. That is the part underneath the cheerful plastic, the reason it works at all. These are women boxed out of regular paychecks and credit and careers, and here is a sliver of money they can reach without leaving the house or challenging the arrangement, a way to earn a little while appearing only to socialize. So the company gets a free national sales force, and the wife gets a few dollars, and the fragile dignity of an income, and the friendship gets converted into a market, all of it wrapped in coffee cake and good cheer. And you go along with it, gladly even, because Connie is your friend and the afternoon is pleasant, and the salad keeper does in fact keep salad, and because you understand the bind she is in, the same bind you are in, the need for a little money of your own in a world that has made that need slightly shameful. Next month it might be your living room and your order form, your turn to sell your friends a thing they half want while they extend you the same kindness you are extending Connie now. So the lid burps, the form circulates, the small commissions change hands, and another friendship doubles quietly as a storefront. From the outside it is just women enjoying a sociable afternoon, which it also genuinely is. Underneath it is a whole shadow economy run on trust and obligation, and the simple buried fact that the wives need money, the decade will not let them earn any straight away, and have built, out of bowls and lipstick and good manners, a small, ingenious, and unspoken workaround that everyone uses and no one quite names. On Sunday the whole family is assembled, scrubbed, and pointed at the church door, and the assembly is half the point. You button the children into their good clothes, you put on the hat, you walk in as a unit and sit where the family sits. Church is faith, and church is also the weekly public showing of a family in good order. The neighbours are there, the minister notes who comes. Being good and being seen to be good have grown so close together that you can no longer always tell which one got everyone out of bed this morning. The preparation rivals the bridge club. The children are scrubbed to a shine and threatened into stillness, the good shoes located, the hats settled, the whole family processed through the bathroom and the mirror and out the door, looking, for 1 hour a week, exactly like the family on the television. Whatever the week held, whatever was said behind the door on Thursday night, by Sunday morning it has all been pressed and buttoned into a single tidy unit, walking up the steps together. The pew does not know about Thursday. Reverend Dahl greets each family at the door with a handshake and a warm word, and he keeps, whether he means to or not, a kind of attendance, a quiet mental ledger of who is here and who is missing and who has not been seen in a while. To be absent is to be noticed. To be present is to be counted among the good, the regular, the families holding it together, and so the pews fill each Sunday partly with the devout and partly with the merely careful, who understand that being seen here is its own form of insurance. Inside, the family performs its hour of order. The children sit still, more or less, drilled into the stillness by the threat of the verdict at home. You sing the hymns and bow your head and feel, perhaps, something because the faith is not fake even when the performance around it is calculated. The two can coexist in the same pew, genuine belief and careful display, the prayer and the appearance of praying braided together so tightly that pulling them apart would tear both. And the appearance matters in a way that reaches well past the sanctuary. A family that comes to church is a family the neighborhood trusts, a family of standing, a family whose troubles, should any leak out, will be met with sympathy rather than suspicion. Respectability is currency in this decade, and church attendance is one of the surest ways to bank it, a public deposit of goodness made every Sunday against the day you might need the community to extend you some credit of the moral kind. So the doors behind which everything is kept hidden swing open one morning a week to display the family at its most assembled, and the display is not exactly a lie, because the faith is often real and the desire to be good is often real too. It is more that the decade has welded goodness to the appearance of goodness so completely that a family cannot easily have the one without performing the other, until even worship becomes partly a matter of being seen in the right pew in the right hat at the right hour. Then the service ends, and the family files out past Reverend Dahl's handshake into the bright Sunday, deposit made, attendance noted, standing maintained for another week. The good clothes come off at home and the ordinary family resumes, the one with the drawer and the bar cart and the things kept well out of the front rooms. But for one shining hour it was assembled and visible and unimpeachable, and that hour, banked carefully every Sunday, is part of what keeps the whole performance solvent the other 6 days, when nobody is watching but the neighbours, who are always, in some sense, watching. The house itself is full of things that will turn out to have been dangerous, and not one of them worries you today. The paint on the windowsills, the kind the baby gnaws when he is teething, is bright and cheerful and full of lead. The insulation, the floor tiles, the patching around the pipes hold asbestos nobody thinks twice about. The car has a steel dashboard and no belts, and the children ride loose in the back, sliding across the seat on every turn. The whole built world around your family is quietly hazardous, and it all looks perfectly ordinary. The paint is the homeliest example. It is durable and washable and comes in cheerful nursery colours, and it is laced with lead, and a teething baby finds the painted crib rail and the windowsill irresistible, gumming the sweet-tasting flakes the way babies gum everything within reach. Nobody knows to stop him. The danger is invisible, slow, and decades from being understood, sitting there in plain sight on every windowsill in the country, bright and pretty and patiently doing harm that will not be named for years. The asbestos is woven through the whole house like a hidden thread. It wraps the pipes and lays under the floor and packs into the walls for insulation, sold as a marvel, fireproof and sturdy and modern, the responsible choice for a careful family. It is in the oven mitt and the ironing board pad and the ceiling tiles. You handle it without a thought, because there is no thought to have yet, no warning printed anywhere, just a useful material doing its useful job and keeping its long secret to itself. The car is its own moving hazard, though it does not feel like one. There are no seat belts, because seat belts are an oddity a few makers offer and most buyers decline. The dashboard is solid steel, the kind of surface a body does not bounce off. And the children ride loose, standing on the seat to see out, sprawled in the back of the station wagon, sliding around the interior on every curve like loose cargo, while you drive with one arm flung sideways across them at every hard stop, which is, for now, considered an adequate safety system, one that is not legally required and not remotely real. What ties all of it together is the sheer ordinariness, The way real danger can hide not behind a locked door but in plain daylight, simply by being too common to question. Nobody is hiding the lead or the asbestos or the loose children. They are right there, in every house and every car on the street, so woven into normal life that to point at them would seem faintly hysterical, the way pointing at the cigarette would, or the cocktail, or any of the decade's other costs paid quietly in a currency no one is reading yet. It is a useful reminder, this catalogue of cheerful hazards, that the dark side of the era is not only the dramatic things, the lobotomy and the maternity home and the bolted exit. It is also this, the slow ambient harm built right into the windowsill and the pipe wrap and the back seat, the dangers a loving and careful family lives inside every single day, precisely because everyone agrees they are nothing to worry about. The most dangerous things are rarely the ones that look dangerous. They are the ones that look like a windowsill. So the baby gums, the bright paint, and the family breathes the woven walls, and the children slide around the back of the wagon on the Sunday drive, and none of it casts a shadow on a single ordinary afternoon. You are doing everything a good mother does, in a house and a car, built by the best modern standards of the moment, and the standards themselves are the hazard, hiding in plain sight, cheerful and washable and patient. The bill for all of it will come due later, quietly, the way so many of this decade's bills do, long after anyone thought to be afraid. Some afternoons, with the children at school and the house already clean and the long bright hours stretching out empty, a feeling arrives that you have no word for. It is not sadness exactly, and it is not laziness, and it is certainly not anything you would mention. It is a flat, restless dissatisfaction in the middle of a life you are supposed to be grateful for, and you assume, because everyone assumes, that the fault is yours alone. You do not yet know that the woman in every house you can see from your window is, at that same hour, feeling the very same thing. It makes no sense to you, which is part of what makes it so heavy. You have the house everyone wanted, the husband with the steady job, the healthy children, the appliances that were supposed to be the answer. By every measure printed in every magazine, you have arrived at the destination, the one the home economics class was funneling toward, the one the whole bright decade promised would feel like fulfillment. And here you are, standing in the middle of the answer, feeling an emptiness you cannot explain and would be ashamed to try. So you do what you have been trained to do with everything that does not fit the picture. You assume the defect is in you. The life is correct. The experts agree. The life is correct. The television agrees. Your mother agrees. So the failure to feel correct inside it must be a personal flaw, an ingratitude, a weakness of character that a better woman would not have. You scold yourself for it. You count your blessings like a penance. And when counting does not work, there is the bottle in the kitchen drawer, which will lower the volume on a feeling you have decided is your own private fault. The cruelest part is the isolation, the absolute certainty that you are the only one. Because nobody mentions it, because the great rule keeps every house sealed, each woman experiences the emptiness as a solitary defect, a thing uniquely wrong with her, never suspecting that the cheerful neighbour waving from her spotless porch goes inside and feels the identical hollow at the identical hour. The silence that hides it from the street also hides the women from each other, so that a feeling shared by millions is suffered every single time, as if it were one woman alone. It will take a name to break it. In a few years, a woman will write a book that finally says the thing out loud, that calls it the problem that has no name, that reports she surveyed her old classmates and found the bright, educated, and accomplished wives quietly miserable in their houses, each one assuming, exactly as you assume now, that she alone had failed at happiness. The book will land like the polio announcement, a relief on a national scale, millions of women discovering in a single stroke that they were never broken and never alone, only unnamed. But that is later, and you are here now, in the empty clean house in the long afternoon, without the name, without the book, without the knowledge that would change everything, which is simply that this is not your private failing but a structural fact of the life you are handed. You only have the feeling, and the shame about the feeling, and the drawer, and the window through which you can see the houses of all the other women carrying the same unnamed weight in the same unmentioned silence. So you stand at the window a while longer, in the middle of the good life, feeling the thing that does not have a word yet, and then you turn back to the clean house and find something to do, because doing something is the only treatment available. You will set out a snack for the children. You will keep your face arranged and the feeling pressed down, and you will wait, without knowing you are waiting, for someone to finally give the weight a name and tell you that it was never, not once, your fault alone. At last it is time for the family photograph, and everyone arranges themselves into the picture the decade has been asking for all along. Father stands behind, hand on a shoulder. Mother sits, ankles crossed, smiling the practiced smile. The children are combed and placed and told to hold still. For one bright second the whole performance holds perfectly, the surface smooth and shining and complete. The camera does not record the drawer, the bottle, the locked ward, the sent-away girl, the careful silence. It records the front of the house. That is, after all, exactly what it was built to do. The arranging is its own small ritual, and you have done it before. The good clothes, the combed hair, the careful blocking, taller ones behind, shorter ones in front, everyone angled toward the lens. The photographer, or the husband with a new camera, calls for stillness and a smile, and the family freezes into the pose, and for the length of one exposure the whole household becomes exactly the image the magazines have been selling back to it all decade. The calm father, the serene mother, the well-placed children, the family in good order, and it is not a lie, quite, which is the thing worth sitting with. The people in the photograph do love one another. The father's hand on the shoulder is real affection. The mother's smile, practiced as it is, sits over a genuine tenderness for the children arranged in front of her. The picture is not false, it is simply partial. It captures, with perfect accuracy, the 1 second the family spent arranged for capture, and nothing of the 1,000 hours around it. Because everything you have walked through this whole long night sits just outside the frame. The little brown bottle is in the kitchen drawer, 10 feet to the left of the shot. The cocktail hour is an hour away. The difficult child who was nearly handed to a stranger is the combed boy in front, intact because his mother refused. The neighbour who went away to rest, the girl who went to an aunt, the uncle who could not bring the someone, the wife doing cold arithmetic at the kitchen table, all of them are real, and none of them are in the picture, because the picture was never meant to hold them. That is what a front is for. It is the side you photograph. The whole decade, in a sense, is this single exposure scaled up to a country, a vast and earnest effort to arrange a complicated, aching, and deeply human reality into one smooth, shining pose, and hold it just long enough for the shutter, so that the record would show the calm and not the cost. And it worked, mostly. The photographs survive. The smooth surface is what got passed down, until people looking back would mistake the pose for the life. But you have spent this night behind the camera, on the unphotographed side, in the kitchen before dawn, and the locked ward, and the maternity home, and the long empty afternoon, and you know what the smiling picture does not show, not because the family was wicked, it was not, but because the arrangement asked everyone to keep so much just out of frame, folded behind the door, smoothed off the surface, that the photograph and the life it claimed to record had become two different things. So the shutter clicks and the pose releases, and the children bolt and the mother's practiced smile relaxes into something more tired and more real, and the ordinary unphotographed life resumes in all its actual texture. The print will come back from the developer in a week or two, and it will be lovely, and it will go in the album, and someday someone will find it and see a perfect family on a perfect street in a perfect decade. They will be looking at the front of the house. Everything else, everything you now know, was always, on purpose, just outside the bright edge of the frame. Well, you made it through the night, and what a night it was. You spent it setting a stage before sunrise, mixing a cocktail that nobody in the house would ever call a drink, building dinner out of a can of soup, ducking under a school desk that was never going to help, and smiling a bright instant fine through a doorway with a great deal kept carefully behind it. You kept up with the neighbours. You held still for the photograph. You ran the most photographed performance of the century, from the unphotographed side of it. Spare a quiet thought, before you drift off, for the people who actually lived inside that bright picture. The wives who folded so much away behind the door and still got dinner on the table. The children kept whole by a mother who simply refused to hand them over. The ones who carried a secret carefully through a world built to catch them, and the ones who went away and came back a little smaller, and the girls who came home in the spring with a story about an aunt. They carried far more than any photograph ever showed, and they mostly carried it without a word. It is something, when you sit with it, how much quiet effort went into keeping a surface that's smooth, How many hands worked just outside the edge of the frame so the picture could look effortless? Thank you for spending this long night with me, here on the backside of the perfect family, where the real one actually lived. You can set all of it down now. It was never yours to carry. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let the day fade out behind you. Let your eyes close and your breathing slow, and the whole bright performance go dark and quiet, the way a house finally settles once the last light is off. Sleep well.